Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Good evening. Welcome to the Township of Old Bridge Zoning Board of Adjustment, May 4th, 2023. Pardon me. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, and the agenda of this meeting. Also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk, and posting the agenda on the municipal website. Ms. C, can we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sullivan.
Here.
Mr. Connor.
Here.
Mr. Stoner.
Here.
Ms. Chevalier is absent. Mr. Scogno.
Here.
Ms. Andrews.
Here.
Ms. Testaverde and Mr. Izzo are absent. Mr. Dasty. Ms. Swan.
Here.
And myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple housekeeping items this evening. First thing I would ask everyone to do, please, if you have a cell phone, which everybody does, please silence it so you don't interrupt the testimony before the board this evening. Should this meeting go beyond 10:30, we have to call it quits. That's the deadline. It starts at 7:30, ends at 10:30. I don't anticipate that happening, but I wanted to forewarn you here in the audience and, of course, those watching at home. This is being televised on CATV 15, the cable television network of Old Bridge. Simultaneously, it's recorded and played on YouTube Live. We would ask anyone testifying this evening to please speak into the microphones, and if you're going to talk in the public portion, you must be sworn in by the board attorney who sits to my right, your left, prior to speaking. You'll be given a chance after each application, should anyone have information that they want to relay to the board, whether it be in favor or against that application. So that time will come, be patient. If you're sitting here and you're thinking of questions in your head, maybe jot them down, so when it does come time, if you want to speak about the matter, you can. As I said, there will be a couple of housekeeping issues, and then we're going to jump right into the applications. We're going to go in order as they're listed if you have an agenda. First of all, we'll get through a couple of resolutions, which Mr. Dasty will put into the record. First one being 83-2020Z, 2G Poor Farm LLC, Major Preliminary and Final Site Plan amended. Mr. Dasty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an amended resolution. There were a couple of housekeeping items that were picked up during resolution compliance. The board previously granted major preliminary and final subdivision approval and final site plan approval. There was a bulk variance for the dwelling units, as well as a design waiver for the sidewalks both were picked up in resolution compliance that were not included in the original resolution of approval. Testimony was provided at the public hearing, and the board did vote affirmatively, beg your pardon, to grant those items. So that is the amended resolution before you.
Move this for adoption.
Connor, motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second, Scogno?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Stoner.
Yes.
Mr. Scogno.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Second one is 54-22Z, Arthur Lessler. It's a C&D variance, also amended. Mr. Dasty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This matter was approved in March. It was a approval for D4 relief and bulk variance relief. It's amended resolution because after the approval and when it was going through that's the only change.
All right, board members, the same, it was an amended application for something, for miscalculation, I believe, or misstated calculation.
Misstated calculation, I think, is appropriate, yep.
Someone want to move that for adoption?
Connor, motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second, Stoner?
Second, Mr. Stoner, roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
yes,
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. All right, that moves us to our applications. As I said, we're going to take them in order. The first one up is 53-2022Z. It's Grayson Road Holdings LLC. This is the Regional Commercial Zone CR. It's Block 5000, Lot 3, located at 10. I honestly don't know why that is.
Sorry, it's fixed now, I'm sorry.
Okay, I thought I was touching something. Again, I'm sorry, that's Block 5000, Lot 3. The physical location is 1030 US Highway 9, outdoor advertising LED sign. It requires a major preliminary and final site plan with D variance. This is commonly called Gateway Shopping Center, if you're familiar with the township. Peter Clauser, Esquire, representing the applicant. Mr. Clauser.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and the professional staff. My name is Peter Clauser. For the record, I'm an attorney with the firm Heilbron Pape on behalf of the applicant, Grayson Road Holdings. This is an application for a use variance relief and in part to amend a prior settlement with the board. So to begin with, procedurally, the board, we can see, only has 5 members this evening. As everyone knows, a use variance relief requires 5 out of the 7 affirmative votes. So with the board and the chair's permission, I'd like to present the application. We have a court reporter here. We'll have a transcript prepared. We'll have it delivered to the board. I would ask that the other members read it. And when we come back, I think we'll be able to complete everything tonight, public and everything. I would just like an opportunity to just kind of sum up and refresh the board what we did tonight, and then just ask that you vote. So we would just be coming back for a vote.
Mr. Chairman, that's fine. I just, so the board members are aware, tonight's going to be your opportunity to ask questions. So if you have questions, don't save them, because the thought process is at the next hearing, you'll sum up, and then we'll have
It'll
a
just
vote.
be me. I won't bring the professionals back.
We'll be taking a vote next time when we have 7 present versus the 5 we have tonight.
Right, exactly. All right, thank you. So this is a billboard that was approved via a settlement with the board back in 2018, located at the Gateway Shopping Center. It's on the southbound side of Route 9. It's double-faced. It actually was an application that was approved, that was voted on in favor by the board. It was a 4-3 vote to approve it, but as we just discussed, because it was 4-3, it was a denial. So the prior owner of the billboard filed a suit, and luckily we were able to work out a settlement with the board, and that was how the billboard was approved. The settlement had a condition in it that said, we're not going to have an LED face, but if a future owner of the billboard wants to come back, they can come and ask the board to have an LED face. So you have a new owner of the billboard, that's Grayson Road Holdings, and they're asking to have one face. It would be the face that you see traveling southbound. There's a better term for it, which you're probably going to hear. But it's the face that you would see traveling southbound. So as you're coming into Old Bridge, that's the face you would see would be LED. There are no other changes proposed as part of the application. Ms. Sawan had recommended when I filed the application that I include a preliminary and final site plan request as opposed to just the use variance. I just want to clarify that there's no changes to the site. The billboard's not moving, the height's not moving, the area of the sign is not moving. None of those things are changing, but we put the site plan in just so that when we get to the building department if the board should act favorably on the application, when we get to building department to do electrical permits and things like that to put the sign in, we don't have an issue. We would have a site plan that's endorsed by the board should you approve it. I have with me this evening 2 witnesses, Lois and Jim Higgins. Lois is a veteran at billboard permitting, billboard regulations. She's going to share with you her credentials. She's the consultant for the applicant in helping them secure these approvals. And specifically, when we were here in 2017 and 18, when we were processing this application, this site did not have the opportunity to have an LED board, which was part of the reason that it made its way into the settlement, because it was too close to another site that had the right to have an LED board. Those people, that company, there's a sign there, never used their rights from the state, and they elapsed. And when they elapsed, Grayson Road Holdings made the application to the state and secured the permit to have the sign here. So it wasn't allowed even in 2018 when you approved the settlement, but it is now, and they do have the permit from the state. Lois will go into that a little bit more and explain how that works. And then, of course, we have Jim, who you're familiar with, to discuss the variance relief that's requested by the board. So if I could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to start by having Lois Arshevsky sworn in, and then share with you her role here and a little bit of her experience. I think you're going to find her well qualified.
Ma'am, if I can ask you to raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board?
I do,
And ma'am, I'm going to ask you to spell your last name.
certainly. My name is Lois Arshevsky, Arszewski.
Thank you, ma'am.
So Lois, if you could just share with the board, what's your relationship to the applicant and your experience in this area?
Most certainly. I am the real estate and development manager at a national billboard company, Adams Outdoor Advertising. I have been that manager for the past 27 years. We operate in 9 states. We have 1,400 billboards in Pennsylvania and 62 billboards in New Jersey. In addition to my role at Adams Outdoor, I'm also a billboard consultant to other billboard companies for permitting billboards. And I'm here this evening as a representative of Grayson Road Holdings to present the application to you.
So in your years of experience, you're familiar with the regulations, the state regulations concerning billboards,
Yes, I am.
and those state regulations in New Jersey, obviously.
Specifically New Jersey DOT, correct.
Okay, so I know that you brought a handful of exhibits, which are up on the board here. So if you could perhaps describe for the board what the first exhibit is, and do you have smaller paper copies I
I
can
do.
hand out?
Thank you. If I may, the exhibit you see on the screen is a street view of the existing billboard.
Ma'am, if I can just interrupt you for 1 minute, this is not included in the application, right? So- Yes, please. All right, this will be A1, ma'am, and if you want to describe it for us, for the record, please.
Exhibit A1 is a photograph, a street view of the existing billboard at the Gateway Shopping Center. The sign face that you see is visible to southbound traffic on Route 9. In the industry, we call this the right-hand read, and it's the billboard that is facing north for southbound traffic. That's the first exhibit. Would you like me to go through the exhibits? Okay.
Yes, please, so you can then refer to them.
Second exhibit is an aerial. The second exhibit, which will be marked as A2, is an aerial showing the existing billboard and the billboard to the north, which is identified as the out front static billboard. And that exhibit will come into play when we discuss the New Jersey DOT application, and that it was not available to Premier previously, but is now. And the third and final exhibit that we have, which will be marked A3, is the outdoor advertising permit issued to Grayson Road Holdings for a digital LED of that southbound right-hand read static face. And if you look at the exhibit marked A3, near the bottom of the letter, it says, for a multi-message sign face. That is the term that the New Jersey DOT uses for what's commonly referred to as digital or LED. And as you can see, that permit has been issued to Grayson Road. So those are the only 3 exhibits we have this evening.
So if you could, Lois, maybe take the board through, I think it's probably A2 that shows the board with the billboard in relation to the other billboards and why it wasn't available back in 2018.
Most certainly. Looking at Exhibit A2, at the bottom of the exhibit, you can see the subject billboard. In 2019, Grayson Road was not able to obtain this digital permit for the reason, if you look to the top of the screen as identified in the yellow box, it says out front static billboard. The New Jersey DOT regulations relative to spacing between billboards for digital is 3,000 feet, same side of the roadway, same travel direction. So in 2019, that billboard at the top of the exhibit out front, although it is not a digital billboard, Out Front Billboard Company had a DOT permit to convert it to digital. They never exercised their right to that conversion. And under the New Jersey DOT regulations, after 4 years, that permit sunsets. So the first reason for denial initially of the Grayson Road in 2019, the spacing required between digital billboards, was eliminated. The second reason for denial in 2019 was under the New Jersey DOT regulation, which requires spacing between a digital billboard and a DOT VMS sign, a variable message sign. Those are the signs that you will see either on the side of the roadway or overhead, which may say construction ahead, the distance to the next exit and the time it will take. But that regulation required a spacing of 1,500 feet. And if I can refer you back to Exhibit A2 on the left-hand side near the bottom, you will see a dimension of 1,372 feet. So the Grayson Road static billboard could not meet the distance to the DOT variable message sign, which required 1,500 feet, and the actual spacing was 1,372. In January of 2022, the New Jersey DOT changed that regulation of spacing between a digital billboard and a variable message sign from 1,500 feet to 800 feet. And hence, the two reasons for denial were therefore eliminated. The out front digital billboard permit was extinguished, and the regulation relative to the DOT variable message sign was revised. And hence, as you can see on Exhibit 3, the DOT digital permit was issued.
So could you talk a little bit about the sign itself, how it operates, how it's illuminated, and the township's conditional use standards and the fact that we would comply with those?
Certainly. Well, the existing sign, as I said, is a static sign, and it has exterior lighting. We're here before you this evening presenting a conditional use application to convert that to a digital sign. And upon conversion, the sign will conform to the standards in the township ordinance. Most notably, the dwell time under the township ordinance is 30 seconds. Dwell time of a digital billboard is the amount of time that one message remains constant. And the standard under your ordinance is 30 seconds, and Grayson Road will comply with that. In addition to that, standard under your ordinance is that the time to change the message after that constant 30 seconds shall be done in less than 2 seconds. Actually, the digital will change that message in under 1 second. And the change will be complete. And what I mean by that is there will be no dissolve of the message. There will be no fading of one message over the other. It is within 1 second, complete change of the entire message. And that regulation is also under the New Jersey DOT. Your standard is also a New Jersey DOT regulation.
And just to give the board a little bit of perspective, what is the dwell time under the state, the DOT regulations?
Under the DOT regulations, that dwell time is 8 seconds.
So this, in comparison to the DOT regulation, this will be, the dwell time of the message will be significantly longer.
Yes, it will be more than 3 times longer than as required by the DOT. But in addition to the dwell time and the amount of time to change the message under your standards, the ordinance also has a standard that the digital unit will be turned off at 11 p.m. And again, Grayson Road will comply with that. As compared to the New Jersey DOT regulations, there is no such regulation. The digital can run 24 hours.
Does the applicant, Grayson, have the ability to work with the municipality so that the municipality would have access to that sign in emergency circumstances, like Amber Alerts, Silver Alerts, if there's an alert for flooding in the area? So as you're coming into Old Bridge, you could be informed by Old Bridge of some sort of an emergency situation that's occurring.
Yes, Grayson Road, excuse me, is offering to the township emergency messaging for the public. The township emergency messaging will work between Grayson and the township. But in addition to that, all of Grayson's digitals also have a partnership with the state police in whatever state it is for Amber and Silver Alerts. And in addition to that, there is also a national program of which Grayson is a member of. And it's run out of what's called the NOC, a National Operating Center. So if there was a need for a national public emergency message, this unit would also be part of that network. So it's emergency messaging on a township, a state, and a national level.
So that's a tool that gets brought out of what was approved in another township into Old Bridge.
Correct. That is correct.
Unless I missed something, Lois, I don't know that I have any other questions for you.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
The only other thing I would like to address is, in the planning comment letter, there was a comment about complying with the UCC Uniform Construction Code. If approved by the board, as we move to building and electrical permits, again, Grayson always complies with the UCC.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Lois is available to answer any questions, and I'm saying Lois because I'm just going to butcher her last name.
That's quite all right.
I'm going to say it's Orchesky.
She wrote to me in an email, R-Chef-ski, so, but I still mess it up.
We'll go with that.
Lois is fine.
Ms. Sawant.
Lois, can you please repeat the 12th time? I missed it while I was taking notes, because I think that's important.
Yes.
For the board to hear especially.
Yes. The dwell time under the township ordinance is 30 seconds. So each message will remain constant for 30 seconds. And then
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is it 1 minute or 30 seconds?
You have two different regulations, Vina. You have the prohibited signs in every zone, which says 1 minute, but then the conditional standards specific to billboards are 30
Or
seconds.
30 seconds, okay,
Right.
okay.
And that was, you pointed out in your memo that we're asking for a use variance
The
from
only
that
reason is
prohibited sign.
because I have gone through the 1 minute regulation before for other applications. So obviously those were not billboards, so I'm like, I thought it was 1 minute,
Yeah,
okay.
the conditional standard for the billboards is 30 seconds, but the signs we do for the fire departments and things like that out in front, those are the 1 minute dwell time.
Because it's actually 250-41Z-13.
Go ahead, sorry for interrupting.
Oh, I was answering your question. So that dwell time will be 30 seconds. And then, as I stated previously, the message will completely change in less than 1 second.
I'm a little
Oh,
confused.
I'm sorry, Vina, there's a.
I'm a little
there's The dwell
confused.
time is where, you have the dwell time where, how long is the message up there for? But
Correct.
then your ordinance also has a standard that when we go from one message to the next, it must be accomplished within 2 seconds. We'll do it within 1 second. So there's no scrolling. There's no fading, there's no, things you would see at the,
Flashing.
Yankee Stadium billboard. None of that. It just goes, yeah.
If I may clarify, there is no scrolling, fading, dissolving, motion, nor animation, all prohibited under your ordinance and under the New Jersey DOT regulations. It's a message for 30 seconds, a change within 1 second, a message for 30 seconds, a change within 1 second, a message for 30 seconds, and so on.
I don't have any further questions.
It's also going to go off at 11 PM every night.
Yes.
That is correct.
Oh, and on that point, one thing we did skip over is the sign has the mechanism in it so that it's appropriately lit depending on the ambient light. If you could maybe explain that.
Yes, the digital unit has an automatic dimmer on it that responds and adjusts to ambient light. And ambient light, as we all know, is not just daytime or nighttime. It's also weather, cloudy. It's been so cloudy the past few days that digital has to come up a little bit. Go down. When it's very sunny, it has to come up. And at night, it is the same thing. I use as an example, if you have a digital in an auto dealer car lot that has parking lot lights at night, that digital has to be brighter to be seen. If the digital is along a roadway, rural, dark, that digital is going to go way down. So that dimmer is constantly adjusting to the ambient light.
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, go ahead.
It turns off at 11 PM. When does it turn back on again? What's the earliest that it operates?
There is no standard in your ordinance.
Okay. So what's the answer?
Yeah, that's 11:01.
I was just going to say,
Not 10:59.
You came up with a good question that I didn't prepare for.
See?
Do you have a usual? When do they come on in the morning? I mean, we want to get on for commuters in the morning, right? I would think.
Yes.
Probably, people are going to New York that way, maybe 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, something like that.
That is a very good question. I would suggest to the board that it turns off at 11 PM and turns back on at 5 AM.
Mrs. Swan, you have a comment on that?
I think I'm okay with 5, but people going to New York are going northbound, not southbound, right?
Oh,
Well, people driving home from New York after a night out.
I'm batting
know-
1,000 here.
So, I mean,
The ordinance is silent as to on time?
It is, yeah.
yes,
I-
I'm
I-
actually going through it right now.
You are.
When I looked at the conditions, I actually have them right
Obviously,
here.
if there's something in there, if there's precedent, do we know of any?
No, and maybe that's something I can look up before, anyways, we're not asking for a vote, right? So when we prepare our resolution, we can reach out to people and
No.
we can
You
come.
know what it is? That's not for billboards. It's not for LED billboards, it's for static billboards, because it says they're externally lighted or internally lighted from dusk until 11 PM. So that really wouldn't make a lot of sense for a digital billboard, that regulation.
I just want to see what do we do with other billboards?
Yeah, that's fine. And I mean, I could talk to my client too in between. We have the benefit of coming back. I don't really think, I would welcome you opening it up to the public again when we came back for that one issue. So I'll work that out. We'll figure out an answer.
So when we come back, you may open it up again.
I think that if I'm probably
Oh,
gonna,
you're gonna sum.
if I'm gonna sum and then I'm gonna tell you that we all agreed to 5 AM, I think we probably have to open up to the public. But I won't have professionals here, but I think it would just be on that. You can limit the public's questions. I'm not telling you what you can do, but I think you can limit the public's questions to that particular
Defer to
issue.
Mr.
That's
Dasty.
fine. If we're gonna,
I'm good with whatever.
I apologize. Yeah, we'll have public comment tonight. The issue as to when the sign can turn back on, you'll put in your summation. We'll see if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah. But I don't think that, it wouldn't make sense for an LED, because that means it would be on for, 4 hours, during the summer. That's not what that means.
For those sitting here, the planner is checking the ordinance online right
Yeah.
now. So it would just be a moment.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah. That was never gonna happen. 24 hours. That was never gonna happen. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
All right, so where do we leave off, Mr. Dasty?
Any other questions from the board?
That's what I was
members,
gonna
Mr.
go to
Chairman?
unless you wanted to comment.
Nope, there's nothing
On
coming.
my left. Go ahead, Mr. Scogno.
Hello, thank you very much. How many messages do you anticipate that changing into?
Grayson and the majority of the industry, we run the digitals on an 8-message loop. Now, in this township, the dwell time, which I spoke of previously, is 30 seconds compared to New Jersey DOT at 8. It may be 6. We have not determined that yet, but a maximum of 8 messages. And if all 8 are not sold, then it would reduce. If only 6 are sold, 4 are sold, but 8 is the maximum.
Then it repeats itself.
And then it repeats, yes.
And who controls that? How do you control putting somebody on and off?
It's a very good question. The control of the advertiser is done in most cases by the billboard company. Sometimes, depending upon the client, because these units have such security layers, the client may have very narrow, limited access. And many times that's for advertisers such as an auto dealer who wants to advertise different used cars and trucks that are available. Or, for example, it's done for sporting events or other special events where they're selling tickets. But in 9.9 out of 10 cases, the billboard company is controlling the advertising. It's all done remotely. Most billboard companies, Grayson included, has one dedicated employee. We call them schedulers, obviously, or inventory management specialists, and that's all they do. In addition to that, each digital unit has a camera, a live webcam. So that scheduler usually has a huge board in their office, and they're watching all the screens.
So this screen, the present one, will have to be dismantled and a new one put up?
Well, it's not dismantled. What happens is the static sign face is removed, and the digital unit in one piece is installed.
I see. So it's backlit.
It's internally lit by LED. But that is the only change requested by Grayson. The location doesn't change. The size of the sign face doesn't change. Only the type of sign face. And I don't want to simplify it, but in this specific case, it is literally taking something as comparison off the wall and replacing it with something else.
So these are individual bulbs, these LEDs?
An LED,
Like the TV.
Yeah,
oh yes, exactly.
yeah, so like the TV,
Yes.
if one of them starts to go out,
If
you
one,
wind up in the recycling bin.
well, if one of them go out, actually they are manufactured and produced in what's called mods, segments, sections, if you will.
Right.
If one mod is
Right.
malfunctioning, the mod goes out. Depending upon the number of them, it all goes dark automatically. But usually it is just that mod that goes out. And today, unlike even 5 or 10 years ago, the problem can be diagnosed and many times fixed remotely.
Okay, Lois, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on my left?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead,
Certainly.
Mr. Stoner.
What is the font size of the lettering of these Lens Digital?
Of the message?
Yes.
There is no specific font size, and I can only speak for Grayson, but we work with and advise all of our clients on design suggestions. For example, we know with digital, color contrast is what makes the message easier to see. You mentioned font size. There's no required font size. However, the attorney mentioned when he introduced me, I'm a veteran. Yes, I am a veteran. Here's an old adage for billboards. 7 words, no more. The motorist has the optimal viewscape for 7 seconds, and the message should be no more than 7 words. But to address your specific question, we have no dedicated or specific font size. But one of the beautiful things about digital is when we upload a message for a client and we write it or look at it on the webcam, if it doesn't read, or for example, the font size is too small, or Land of the Giants too big, the designer can adjust that.
And color scheme?
Color scheme, as I mentioned, the industry has found that using a good contrast, almost like the black and white name right here, works. Using a heavy white with a light blue doesn't read. So if the design has some contrast to it, it will be readable.
All right, so one last question.
Sure.
You mentioned switch like that in 30 seconds, right? So when you make that switch,
1 second. It will,
Every 30 seconds.
Yeah, every 30 seconds.
Takes a second to switch.
okay.
you're going to switch in one.
So you could change colors, you can change anything in 30 seconds after it makes the switch.
Yes, yes.
So it's become instant.
Yes. And the way it works behind the scenes, if you will, I'm not an engineer, but I've been doing this since the product really came to the industry in 2004. What happens is, think of it like a visual playlist. Message A is up, and B is right here. And when that 30 seconds is up, it's gone. And the next one is up. And it could be a completely different message, different colors, different designs, photo, text, whatever. And then it just keeps
All right, thank you.
rotating like that.
Mr. Connor?
When we talk about the transition from the existing to the new mod system,
Yes?
how long will that take?
The installation,
Construction /
it
installation?
will be 1 day. What will happen is, the digital will come on a flatbed. When it arrives, if all goes well, and it usually does, the static sign face is removed, okay? And the static sign face is removed, that's put on another flatbed. The digital is there, the crane takes it in one pick and puts it on. And the welders weld it, and it's done, 1 day.
Very good, thank you.
Because the digital is installed in one piece. Just as comparison, in the old days, first it was 8 pieces, then it was 4, then it was 2, now it all comes in one.
I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
The spacing went from 3,000 feet down to,
Well, the 3,000-foot spacing is between digital billboards. That remained the same. But
the
this,
spacing, is that distance within the boundaries of a township, or is it within just the highway itself?
just the roadway itself.
Isn't there a billboard, a LED billboard on the northbound side?
There is, but the DOT regulations are same side of the roadway, same travel direction.
Okay. So it does go by that, right?
Yes.
Okay. My second question is, why would you only be asking for one side of the billboard?
Okay. The reason we're asking for only one side, if we refer back to the exhibit on the screen, which is A2, and look from the bottom on the right-hand side, you can see the yellow box that says VMS NB, and you can see in yellow the distance is only 583 feet, I believe, 83, yes.
583.
And with the revised regulation in January of 2022, it's 800. So it cannot meet that.
And just to go back, when you first introduced yourself, you said you're an employee of,
Adams Outdoor Advertising.
and you mentioned Premier a number of times intertwined with Grayson Holdings. Is Grayson Holdings part and parcel or any way connected to Premier Media?
No.
No, it's a different company, and they sold them the billboard.
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Lois, very much.
Thank you very much.
I don't know why I came.
Oh, one thing I would point out, this is going to expire in a few days.
Actually, and
This copy, anyway.
yes, and I have it with me. Under the New Jersey DOT regs, all permits expire/renew in May. We have already renewed that. I do have the receipt if you'd like us to submit it to the board.
Sure, Mr. Clauser will take care of that. I just point that out, though. It's May 15th is expiration date.
Yes, and we have renewed it already.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Jim.
Good evening.
Do you swear affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board?
I do.
Thank you. Your name again, sir, just so everybody hears it?
James Higgins, Higgins.
I am a licensed planner, and my license is current.
Mr. Higgins, not for the benefit of the board, because we've recognized you. For those at home, just give a quick, who
Yeah,
you are, why you're here.
Yeah, I am here to provide expert planning testimony to justify the granting of the variances that are requested. I'm a licensed planner in the state. I have been licensed for approximately 45 years.
I think that's sufficient, so I just wanted those at home to know who
Okay,
you were.
very good.
We accept, obviously, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I often do, Jim, I'm just going to get out of your way and go ahead, share with the board your analysis and your conclusion.
I think you've had a very, very thorough explanation of what the application is and what's going to be constructed on the site, what's going to be changed. So I don't think it's necessary for me to repeat all of that. What I will do is go through the statutory requirements for the granting of the use variance. And this is a D1 variance, which is a straight use variance, because while the zones on either side of this site permit billboards as conditional uses, the CR zone does not. And there is an approval in place by virtue of the settlement between the prior owner of the billboard and the board with regard to approving the static billboard on the site. In my opinion, at that point in time, one of the things the main thing that has to be shown is that the site is particularly suited for the use for the board to grant a D1 variance. And in this instance, at that point in time, the site was not particularly suited for the use because they could not get a state permit to construct the billboard because of the proximity to the other approved LED billboard, which that approval is now expired, and also to the state VMS sign, which was less than 1,500 feet away, and now that regulation has changed to be 800. So this proposed billboard now meets both of those requirements. And in my opinion, that makes this site particularly suited now for the proposed use. The board did find it was particularly suited for a static billboard, and quite frankly, I don't see much difference. If anything, I think utilizing the site for an LED billboard actually has certain benefits that the static billboard does not have. One of those, which Peter alluded to a little bit earlier, was that the municipality could then avail themselves to the use of the billboard in emergency situations, and that could be done very, very quickly, if not instantaneously, but within a matter of a half hour or an hour, to put an emergency message on that billboard that could benefit the public. That can't be done with a static billboard. In addition, there could be other public purpose messages that could be put on the billboard, particularly in times where all of the advertising space on that billboard is not utilized. The applicant could then approach the township to have some of that space utilized for other public purposes. So I think there's a significant benefit there. In addition, there's been some discussion asked questions by board members, and very good questions about things like font size and color contrast. And when you have an LED situation, if that message goes up and it's not readable, it can be changed fairly quickly and fairly easily. Or if there's problems with the color contrast, that can be changed too. Whereas if you have a static billboard that is where the sign face is basically pasted on, then it can't be very quickly changed, and you're stuck with a billboard that just doesn't function as properly as it could. In addition, the issue of the changing the light due to the ambient light. If you have a static billboard that's controlled by lights that are just shining on the billboard, that doesn't change. So at night, that could be very bright, whereas with the LED billboard, the intensity of the light can be reduced automatically with the ambient light meter that's on the billboard. So I think in terms of aesthetically, it's a much better solution too. You get more messages, you have much better aesthetic control, and you can have public purpose messages put on there very easily, particularly if you have an emergency situation. So I think there are substantial benefits. I think all of those go toward the particular suitability of this billboard in this location and the particular suitability of changing it from a static to an LED. I don't see any substantial negative impacts. The time will still be shut off at 11 o'clock at night, and I understand that there's a question about when it will be turned on in the morning. I had that same question myself, and I'm kicking myself for not talking to Peter about it, so we could have been better prepared tonight to discuss that issue. And I'll take partial responsibility for that. The intensity is, again, the intensity of the illumination is much better controlled, so in terms of negative impact, I think it's better. And the frequency of the change of the message, again, I don't think there's a substantial negative impact there. Again, the state requirement is every 8 seconds. This will be changed every 30 seconds, which is consistent with the conditional use requirements of your ordinance. And while, again, those conditions don't technically apply because this is not a conditional use in the CR zone, I think it's good to use them as a standard to basically guide the board's judgment as to whether or not the sign is appropriate. So once every 30 seconds is substantially longer than the state requirement of once every 8 seconds. And so I don't see any substantial negative impact there. And the billboard does have state approval so that it meets all state safety and visual requirements. So I really don't see any substantial negative impact. I think it's actually an improvement over the existing situation, and I do think the site is particularly suited for the use as proposed.
Thank you, Jim. I have no questions of Mr. Higgins.
Ms. Sawant.
I do not have any further questions.
Dasty, anything?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Board members to
I
my
do
left.
not, sir.
What was that?
I have nothing further, Mr. Chair. I ask that it may be perhaps the application be opened up to the public, and then we could discuss our procedure again.
All right, very good. This is matter 53-2022Z. The location is Gateway Shopping Center, or 1030 US Highway 9. We're changing a static billboard that is already erected to a LED motion billboard. I shouldn't say motion, that's the wrong word. Anyone here this evening in the courtroom wishes to speak, please raise your hand. I see none. I'm going to close the public portion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we discussed earlier in the beginning the limited number of board members and creating a transcript and coming back before the board. I know we have one open question with regard to the start time and the close time. So if the board finds it appropriate that I should go home and come back, then that's what we'll do. And I'll get a transcript and come back.
Let me ask you a question. Would the township agree, if there is a vagueness in if you're shutting down at 11, and it's vague as to when we can start up, would the township agree that 0500 would be the appropriate time?
I just want to go back and check what times what are the regulations on the other signs within the township, and I will discuss it with Peter as well as Chris.
Okay, but from the board standpoint, absent that, would the board be inclined, if you were to vote for an approval on this, would you be inclined to say 0500 hours, 5 a.m. in the morning? Should there be none, and that comes back to us? I mean, we could talk about this right now, so.
Sure. Yeah, so what the chairman's alluding to is, let's say that there is no regulation, rather than having Peter having to come back and close and say, now it's going to be 5 o'clock, open it back up to the public and whatnot. It's 5 a.m. Okay to turn the lights back on, or is?
No problem.
Well, why don't we just, Mr.
problem.
Scogno, do you have a problem if
No,
we did? If we
no
did
problem.
Mr. Stoner? Mr. Connor?
That's fair.
Ms. Andrews? I just would like to put forward that to you for thought that we wouldn't have to debate this unless, of course, you would agree that if there is precedent, then we would probably have to follow that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see that. I know that when I got a chance to speak to Lois, that is her recommendation, sort of like 5 to 11 is what makes sense. I'm just curious. I'm in the precarious situation of asking 5 members to vote
Well,
on
I'm
an
going to just do
application.
something further, and I don't know how the board feels either. Obviously, I sat here a long time, but you never know how people are going to vote.
Yeah.
And I only get one.
Right.
So if there are any issues that you want to discuss tonight, reference this matter that we couldn't settle tonight, and And I would start Mr. Scogno.
How much brighter is the light present compared to when we put the LEDs in?
I think the testimony,
What's
without,
what's the present lighting now?
come on up, Lois.
The existing static billboard is lit by external lights that are mounted on the bottom, and then they tilt back in to the sign face.
It seems like there's lighting on the top also tilting down.
They're only on the bottom. And with an LED, the light is internal
Right.
with those LEDs. So exterior static lights, when they're mounted from the bottom and they're coming back into the sign face, if you could visualize, the light then has what we call a little bit of spray on it, a halo, if you will, with an LED that does not exist. So actually, when you said, I think if I'm paraphrasing you right, what is the difference between the lighting? That's difficult for me to answer because I don't have a metric, if you will. Is it a nits or a foot candle? And we don't need to get into any of that. But I will just tell you that, in my opinion, the static lights, they have no boundary. Like I said, they have that halo around them. The digital, the intensity is constant
Okay,
and can change to the ambient light.
thank you.
Similar to watching a smart TV in your home, if you turn the lights off in the room, it adjusts to the viewing.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to adopt that example.
Now, you're not an engineer, but you play one on the billboard. You can bring that forward. Any other questions
No, thank you.
or issues that you want to discuss tonight? Mr. Stoner, any? No. Mr. Connor?
None.
And Ms. Andrews? And from the township? Obviously, the ball's in your court, Mr. Clauser. If you want to go take a vote, we're available to do so. If you do not, you'd rather come back, we could just take that the next time.
It really seems as though the board is favorable toward this application, so I hope I'm not doing something stupid and I'm asking you.
Well, listen, I can't advise you.
Well, we'll find out.
How many times have you said that? No, I wouldn't want that for the client.
Someone
either.
tell me to go home.
Personally, I like the change anyway. I think it is important to be able to have the usage of these boards for emergency situations. This is not the first one we've done here in this township, and they are in other townships as well, going up and down 9. So they're common to people to see nowadays, and I think they do present a better message than what you saw on a static board. Particularly, I would agree, there's a halo on lighting at nighttime of static boards that sometimes affects drivers. At least, it affects me if I see it differently than a clearer picture. That's just my thought. I don't hear anybody having an opposition, but again, if you're more than welcome, I could put you up on the agenda. as soon
I
as
think I'm
possible.
comfortable with the board voting on this application. I
Is
think it
everyone-
makes a lot of
Are
sense.
you comfortable voting on this tonight, board?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Having said that, is there any final, anything you want to put on the record?
No, I think it's been said. I think this makes, it's a good tool for the town, and it's the entranceway to the town.
And we agreed to, the town would have permission to be able to attempt to put emergency message on.
Oh, yeah, we'll coordinate with you.
Right. The conditions of approval that I have is that, obviously, Pete, provide us a copy that the permit's been renewed.
Yes.
Okay, because that expires, so that would be a condition of approval prior to memorialization. Also, it's a 30-second message, a maximum of 8. It will change, the change time is 1 second in between messages.
Less than 2.
Less than 2.
Less than 2?
Yeah.
Okay. And that if there is a township regulation that we find out after the fact that is different than 5 a.m. from when it turns on, you'll comply with that, and it goes off at 11 p.m.
And I would think, too, that if the regulation is so onerous, then we've both, the board and the applicant, have operated under a mistake, and I think that would give us an opportunity to revisit that issue.
I would certainly think so.
Yeah.
You said
But
something, a max, 8 seconds.
No, no,
it's
maximum.
a maximum of
loop.
8 messages, excuse me.
In the loop.
Of 8 messages, I beg your pardon. And one face LED.
Right, it is only the one face, the
And you
southbound.
previously put that on the record?
Yes.
So Board, this is requiring a D1 variance, correct?
It's requiring a D1, so in order to grant the variance, it will take all 5 votes, Mr. Chairman.
That's what I thought. Someone interested in moving this application to D1?
Move it for approval, Scogno?
Is there a second?
Second, Stoner?
Ms. Andrews, seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Mr.
There's a site plan, though, too. We did file.
And
Major
the site,
preliminary, okay.
I beg your pardon, yes.
Major preliminary and final site, oops, wrong side. Major preliminary and final site plan. Can we do them both together, right?
You can do a motion on that as well, yes, sir.
Motion for preliminary and final at the same vote. I'll move it. Is there a second?
I'll second, Stoner.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews, Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, I want to thank you, Mr. Clauser, and
Thank
your
you very much.
witnesses for their presentation this evening.
Put it all on red.
Just, yeah. Well, you know what's funny? Very quickly, and I'll get out of everyone else's way. When the settlement was approved, it was 5 members voting, 5-0. That was all it was. There was no 7. So we have a history of that. Thank
Good
you.
night, sir.
Have a good night.
Okay, we'll move it right along. Are you okay? Do you need a break? You good? Okay. Next matter in the evening is 57-2022Z. This is Vassal Centipal. The zone is environmentally sensitive, the ER. It's block 13005, lot 55, located 119 Wesley Road, for a new single-family home requiring D variance. Jared Pape, Esquire, representing the applicant. Mr. Pape.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members, board professionals. My name is Jared Pape. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Heilbrunn Pape, and we represent the Centipals this evening. I'd like to begin just to confirm that the notice package that we provided was adequate to provide this board with jurisdiction.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is a...
Mr. Pape, I don't mean to interrupt, but only because there was the denial of the application that I think you're here on is lot 56. I just want to make sure, because I know it's the same family, and there was a little bit
There
of
is, the first one I have is
57.
55 and then 55.
Yeah, it says it in the review
Okay.
memo, but if you look at the denial of the application, it says 56.
Okay, which one are we taking
I
first?
apologize. In application 57-2022Z, the review memorandum says lot 56, but in the application package, the denial of the application, which is why you're here, says lot 56. Right? Yeah.
Is block 13,005, lot 55.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the other one maybe incorrect then?
The other one is 58-2022Z, and it's lot 56.
That's the next one upcoming. Is there something wrong on the?
We submitted notices separately, so there was 2 separate
I
notices.
understand, I'm not trying
there
to
a-
mix the two.
Okay.
Maybe the denial form that was used had the wrong lot. Okay.
Understood.
55.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
On that point, procedurally, these are 2 separate applications, but these 2 lots are next to each other, and the presentation is essentially identical. So if it's acceptable, what we intend to do is present one application, and we would ask for 2 separate votes. But as I mentioned, the testimony really is exactly the same for both lots. And just, go ahead.
Nope. Finish your thought. Go ahead.
I was going to move to.
Sure, and Mr. Pape, certainly understand you're operating at your own risk, but you can incorporate by reference, and we'll do it as we get there. You'll do this application first, you'll take a vote. If you want to move on to the next application, we'll have this back and forth, and you'll just incorporate by reference the testimony of the previous application.
Understood, and that's acceptable. Thank you.
Does everyone kind
Board
of
understand that the next application, there's, this, I really shouldn't be talking about the second application, but the first application for is a home. The very next lot, it's an identical home, correct?
Correct.
It's the same size, so, but we can cross that bridge after we get over this hump.
That's what we were speaking about.
And just for the benefit of the board members, even the memos are quite identical.
Yes.
Right.
Mr. Pape, I'm
We-
sorry, go
We
ahead.
did find some minor differences, but they were essentially the same. So just by way of background, our clients are seeking D1 use variance relief to install two single-family residences on the two lots being lots 55 and 56. We have two witnesses this evening. Christopher Rosati is our applicant's professional engineer, and James Higgins is the professional planner. Our clients are here as well. I do not intend to call them, but they're available in case there's any specific questions for them. So with that, if it's acceptable, I'd like to have Mr. Rosati sworn in at this time.
Mr. Rosati, how are you, sir? Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board?
Yes, I do.
Let's have your name again, sir, please.
Christopher P. Rosati, R-O-S-A-T-I, with FWH Associates, Toms River, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Could you provide your credentials for the board, please?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Rutgers University, graduated in 1994. I have been employed with FWH Associates, formerly Flannery Webb and Hanson, 27 years of my 29-year career, mostly in land development projects, starting as a youngster with doing small plot plans, et cetera, moving up to large subdivisions, large site plans. I'm currently a principal with the firm, and I am director of our land development section. And 2 years of my career, I was with a different company in Neptune, New Jersey, where I was a planning board engineer and assistant township engineer.
Mr. Rosati, for those watching at home, you're a licensed
I am a licensed professional
in the state of
engineer.
New Jersey,
Yes, I am,
correct?
and my license is current.
And you're here to testify on that.
Yes,
Thank you very much, sir. We accept your credentials.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosati, your office prepared a number of exhibits in addition to the site plan that was, in addition to the variance map that was submitted and currently shown on the exhibit board. I would ask if we could identify those exhibits now and mark them into evidence.
If you can bring that one that was just up, that was the submitted variance map. The next one, we're not really going to dwell on the submitted variance map. We have colored renderings that are a little bit more clear and will paint the picture a little bit better. If you could go to, I think the first one where I think that's an aerial photo. I have boards too, if this isn't working well. There we go. This exhibit is actually the one that paints the best picture of where we are while we're here. I guess this would be A1, since the initial exhibit was the submitted variance map.
And this is the aerial exhibit, last revised, Mr. Rosati, if you know.
I can look at it on my board.
There you go. 5/9 of 23? Or 5/3 of 23?
5/3/23, last revision, that's correct.
5/3/23. Thank you, sir.
We could probably stay with that for now, so I can describe the property. We are along Wesley Road, block 13005, lot 55. We're on the easterly side of Wesley Road in the township of Old Bridge. Again, we are in the ER, environmentally sensitive recreation zone. As you can see on the aerial, we are a wooded site. From a topographic standpoint, the site is sloped towards Wesley Road from about 100 feet into the lot to a high point, and then it breaks to the east towards a wetland corridor, sort of midline of the property as it goes east to west. You can also see on the Exhibit A1, we have a very long and narrow lot. It's a very deep lot. The lot dimensions are approximately 100 feet in width by 900 feet in depth. The total lot area is approximately 2 acres. Again, from the aerial exhibit, we have similar developments to the north and south along Wesley Road. Is it possible to zoom in a little bit on that red? There we go. So we can see we have the zone boundary on the map. Just to the north of us, 2 lots north, is the R20 zone district. We are in that ER district. But you can also see in that ER district along our road, we have 2 existing homes to the north, and we have 4 existing homes to our south. So essentially, this is an infill development that we're requesting approval from the board. I spoke about a wetland corridor, kind of midpoint of the lot. We currently do have a valid letter of interpretation from the Department of Environmental Protection. From a soil standpoint, we have a well-drained sandy loam, and we have a water table a little bit, approximately about 10 feet below existing grade. And we analyzed all these criteria prior to siting the home that the applicant wanted to place. So we definitely did our homework prior to showing what we can probably show on the next exhibit. I think there's one called blow up. That first one, I think that's what we want. So this is, this will be A2. This is basically a blow up and cleaned up version of the submitted plan. The submitted plan had a lot of engineering detail on it. It's a little tough to read. So we took the contours off. We took some other notes and dimensions off just to make it a little bit clearer to read. So we sited the house about 95 feet from the road. So it's a little bit further back than what the bulk requirements demand, which is 50 feet front setback. And now just another point of order with the bulk requirements, the ER district, being that it doesn't allow single-family homes, doesn't have bulk requirements for a single-family home. So we inquired with the township professionals, and since we are surrounded by R20 uses, the direction was, let's go with the R20 because that fits with the established development pattern of the area. So that's what we did. So we are fully compliant with the R20 standards, but again, we're sited back at 95 feet approximately to the front of the garage door. Now, the reason we did that is I already said our high point going from Wesley Road up and then back down is roughly 100 feet from the road. So we are, the center line of the house, we'll say, is approximately at the high point of the lot. So the front of the lot drains towards Wesley Road, the rear of the lot drains towards the wetland corridor, and in no instance do we have any grading to our adjacent neighbor. So from a stormwater standpoint, we're sort of self-sufficient. The proposal is also to have the roof runoff directly piped to 2 different underground recharge systems. They're basically underground pipes wrapped in stone where the excess runoff from the roof will go in the ground. And again, the soil type that we encountered is very suited for an underground drain system for that roof runoff. That roof runoff system is designed for the 10-year storm, which is roughly 6 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. Similar to some of the rain that Monmouth Ocean County got over the weekend. So we sized our system to take all of that runoff from one of those storms and store it and recharge it back into the ground. So the proposed home is 6 bedrooms. I'm sorry, excuse me. We have a water table of 10 feet below grade. We are proposing a basement. The basement will be situated that it's 2 feet higher than the estimated seasonal high water table. Your town requires 1 foot, but our standard from our company is 2 feet, just for a little belt and suspenders, because at times the water table will fluctuate a little bit greater than what you can encounter. All utilities are in place within Wesley Road, so everything's right there in our front yard, sanitary sewer, water, electric, what have you. So this whole area is ready for these this home, should the board act favorably. So actually, in short, from an engineering perspective, there's really nothing that presents difficulty or anything that prevents us from constructing a single-family home on the subject lot. We were asked to address the engineering comments item by item from your board engineer, since she is not here tonight, so we can put it on record. They are fairly common and standard comments for a single-family home development, which would typically be done at plot plan time. Again, should the board act favorably, the next step would be for us to submit for building permits, and part of the building permit package would be an engineering drawing showing the grading, what have you. So I can go through the engineering comments from the May 3rd, 2023 memo. It would start on page 4 of 6, J, engineering comments. Item 1A, the variance plan should be revised to include the driveway pavement, driveway apron, and sidewalk details, and we agree. Item B talks about the standard pavement criteria for the road repair, should that be necessary, and we agree to match township standards. Your township ordinance requires a maximum driveway slope of 6%. I can testify that we can meet that criteria. We have to do a little bit of adjusting of the grading, setting the garage floor a little bit differently, but we have that opportunity, so we can be compliant with that element. Item D, label all building dimensions on the footprint, no problem. Item E has to do with showing a location for a basement sump pump and the request that the that we cannot discharge directly onto Wesley Road, or we can even connect it to that proposed seepage pit, and we agree to meet the requirements of your engineer on that. We, again, looking at, I believe, at A2, you can see to the north and south of the lot, those little dashed line areas, we're calling that proposed dry well. Your engineer asked that we locate them to be at least 15 feet away from the building footprint, and we agree. We can simply just slide them downhill, and the reason for that is, and I agree, the further away those little recharge areas go from your basement, the better, so we can just relocate them on a revised plan, and that's not a problem. Show the approximate location. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Soil boring information. Again, I testified that we did soil work prior to the design, and I'm testifying that the estimated seasonal high water table is approximately 10 feet below existing grade, which will allow for a basement, and our basement will be 2 feet above that. So we agree with item G. Item H, show the approximate location and connection points of water, sanitary sewer, et cetera, and we will do that on the plot plan, not a problem. Item I, about a note, talking about under no circumstances shall individual lots be graded in such a manner as to redirect stormwater onto an adjacent lot or downstream properties. And again, by my testimony, we already have graded it that way, and we agree. Item J is to provide a copy of the DEP letter of interpretation, which we will do. Item K asks for a fence to be placed. If you, again, going towards A2, we have the light green on the exhibit. That's going to be, you know, the lawn area, the yard, what have you. And then we have a heavy wooded line. That's basically the freshwater wetland transition area line, or the wetlands buffer, we call it. We have a standard buffer of 50 feet per this letter of interpretation. So your board engineer is asking that we install a fence along that line with a sign on it, basically identifying this area as being sensitive and no, mowing or taking of trees down or dumping fill or what have you, and we agree to do that. Item L, general note about bringing in fill material, that if we do need to do so, the same will be tested to make sure it's clean fill, and we agree to do that. Item N just notes that we will need a road opening permit to do any digging in the road for our utility connections. We agree. Item N, there is
could jump in on
Yeah, sure.
item N. So we understand there's some encroachments, actually both from the neighboring properties from the north and south. Appears to be a trailer and a shed. And it's our understanding that there have been some discussions with the neighbor, and it's our client's expectation that all of those encroachments would be removed before they proceed to construction.
Thank you. Item O just denotes that we will need a tree removal permit, and again, should the board act favorably, that would be part of the building permit process. The other items, just want to let you know what we have in hand as far as outside agencies. We do have the DEP letter of interpretation. We also have the Freehold Soil Conservation District certification as well.
Thank you for going through those point by point. And so just to summarize, you can comply with all of the engineering comments listed in the report?
Yes.
Thank you. One other comment I wanted to point out, there was a note in the general planning comment section of the report that made a suggestion to install a retaining wall to create more usable yard space. I'm not sure if you had already touched on this, but our clients are agreeable to that comment. We think it's a good suggestion, so I wanted to point that out. Any other comments? Any other engineering comments?
No.
I have nothing further of Mr. Rosati, unless there's any questions from the board.
Mr. Wan?
I think I'm good because I had talked to Mr. Pape to go over each comment so that, because Nicole and I have discussed each of the comments, there weren't any significant engineering concerns. I'm comfortable with the testimony. One of my suggestion was to level the rear yard so that it's more usable, because if you notice on the grading plan, the rear yard drops down by 4 feet. So instead of having a slope and first constructing the house, and then when they decide to fill it up, filling it up would be a challenge. So I had that comment and the applicant has agreed. So I don't have any further questions for the engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Wan. Board members to my left? No, sir. Ms. Andrews? Mr. Dasty?
No, sir.
I have nothing, Mr. Pape.
With that, we'd like to bring in our next witness, James Higgins.
Wait a second here. There we go.
Mr. Higgins, you swear affirm to testify the truth in this matter before the board?
I do.
We'll have your name again, sir.
James Higgins, and my license is still valid. It hasn't changed in the last 30 minutes.
As long as it didn't expire in the last.
Yeah, it didn't expire. Nope, it did not.
For those at home, if you just tuned in, you are a professional.
I'm a licensed professional planner, and I will give testimony as to the positive reasons, special reasons for granting the use variance and any potential negative impact.
On this application.
On this
correct?
application,
And if you
yes.
were watching Mr. Higgins testified in a matter before, obviously the board is familiar with your credentials, and we accept your expertise, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins, I'll pass it off to you and ask that you provide the board with your narrative to justify the variance relief.
Okay, and once again, the application has been explained to you, I think, in detail, so I don't need to go over all of that. What I will talk about is the fact that if this is in the ER zone, and the use is not permitted, residences are not permitted. And I'll very quickly go through the uses that are permitted in the zone. Marine craft transportation, cemeteries, crematoriums, mausoleums, fairgrounds, golf courses, riding academies, play lots and playgrounds, resorts, group camps, parks, and then a number of horticultural uses for growing crops and also for animal husbandry, kennels, and forestry. Clearly, when you look at this site, none of those uses are really appropriate on the site to begin with because of the nature of the lot and the very deep nature of the lot and the fact that the uses on either side are single-family residential uses. So when I look at this, I think there are special reasons for the granting of the variance. What variance is requested, the use variance, the site, as the aerial showed, is in an area of very similar size single-family residences the character of Wesley Road has been developed over the years such that you have single-family residences on lots that are approximately 100 feet wide. And this is basically an infill development that's consistent with the existing development in the area. In addition, the lots itself, because they're very deep, this is very deep vacant lot, is somewhat of an attractive nuisance. And to put a little bit of levity into this, it would eliminate the possibility of something happening which has happened in Old Bridge. I don't know if it was today, yesterday, or in the last week, where somebody dumped 500 pounds of uncooked pasta in a wooded
Cooked
area
pasta.
near.
It was cooked.
What?
It was cooked.
It was cooked.
Five
Oh, okay.
wheelbarrows.
The Asbury Park Press said uncooked pasta.
No, it was cooked.
It was cooked.
Vegetation to me.
Yeah, in a wooded
crazy.
area. So, I mean, clearly, that would eliminate that type of situation occurring here. But also, you have the street has full utilities in it, and it's clearly intended that the street be developed for residential purposes. And what's being proposed here is to develop the front portion of the lot for residential purposes and keep the rear portion, because it's environmentally sensitive, keep it undeveloped. So I think what's being proposed here is consistent with the intent of the ER zone, and that intent, which is shown in Ziva's report, but is to preserve and protect the groundwater table and water recharge areas for water supply purposes, protection of the ecological system, and to protect the health and safety of the occupants of lands subject to seasonal or periodic flooding, preserve freshwater wetlands, and recognize existing and proposed parklands. And clearly, development of the site for any of the permitted uses in the zone, because of the nature of the site and the nature of the surrounding uses, I don't think would advance that purpose, particularly since many of those uses require heavy use of fertilizers and pesticides that would not be as heavily used for a single-family residence. So I think it would help protect the groundwater better as proposed. It's compatible with surrounding uses. And when I look at it, I think it's just something that makes sense. It fits in very nicely with the character of the area. I don't see any substantial negative impact. The use and the bulk development standards that are proposed are consistent with what exists in the area. And again, the limited development of the site, with just the front portion of the site, preserves approximately 2/3 to 3/4 of the site. So I don't think there's any substantial environmental negative impact. And basically, that's it. I think there are there's particular suitability, there are special reasons, and no substantial negative impact.
Ms. Sawant.
I don't have any questions for Jim, but I do have some comments, and this is for the board members. This is not the first time that I have come across this situation. It's just that this is probably one of the first times that the zoning board is seeing an application like that, because I have received numerous requests from residents or people who have inherited properties from their parents, not knowing that their property was rezoned at some point into an ER zone, but then the neighboring property has a house on it. And the challenging part, I don't know what was the circumstances when the ER zone was created, but to create a zone and not have bulk standards is quite strange. So it has been on my to-do list of changing and re-examining these properties to see if I could rezone them back to residential use, and also if there are properties that need to remain in ER, then have bulk standards for it. But like I said, it's on my to-do list, and at some point I'll get to it.
And thank you for that, Ms. Sawant, because I didn't think it fair that I asked the question of Mr. Higgins, which was, my question was going to be, I've seen that there looks like there's 14 homes there.
Yes.
And why is this the first one that has approached the board? And I've sat on this board since 2006, so I know that there hasn't been any. Well, how did that happen?
So I think it was yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the ones that
Mr. Higgins, if
exist
you would,
there
tell the board.
now, most of them that exist there are in the R20 zone, so they wouldn't have to come
I
for the
see,
use
okay.
variance. But, and to just pick up on what Ziva was saying, is that Arvina was saying, is that it's hard because case law basically says that I, as a planner, can't attack the ordinance when I'm looking for a D variance. But quite frankly, the land use law requires that zoning give reasonable consideration to the character of an area when developing a zone. And I agree with Vina that this doesn't give reasonable consideration to the character, particularly because there's no bulk standards.
And you know what, in defense of my predecessors, because I don't know who wrote it, but now I have the advantage of GIS and the technology. But back then, probably it was just going and inspecting. And so maybe that's why these properties were included in ER. But today, when I have the entire GIS database where I can go and check every detail of the property, it makes it easier. So in fact, it was 2 years back, I started drafting the ER zone ordinance, and I would zoom into each property, but then I realized that there are quite a lot of properties. There are few on Old Waterworks Road towards that side, which again has the same problem, and at some point, they will come to the zoning board if I don't fix it. There are some also near Pleasant Valley, so I have to take a close look.
Thank you. Any questions as we move forward? You have any, another witness?
No further witnesses.
Okay. Anything from you, Mr. Dasty?
No, Mr. Chairman.
How do you want to go on this? Do you want me to go to the public on this now, on this particular application?
Yes, please.
All right, and then we'll see what happens from there, okay? This is matter 57-2022Z. The location is 119 Wesley Road for a new single-family home. Anyone here in the room wish to be heard, please raise your hand or stand. No one has stood. I'll assume no one has any comments. I'll close the public portion. You've reached the end of your testimony on this. And hold me back if I go afoul here. The two choices are you can rest or you can ask for a vote tonight, right? And what we know coming forward is you have another application in front of us, and it's for the adjacent lot. And it's going, is this okay to put in the record?
Yeah.
And it's going to be for an identical build, and there may be a couple tweaks? Is that kind of?
It's identical.
Yeah, okay.
Nearly identical.
And your engineer will testify, and your planner will testify almost verbatim.
Correct.
Go ahead, no, Mr. Dasty.
And I want to, and let's handle 57-2022Z, but on the other application, you're going to incorporate by reference the testimony. You're going to agree to all the conditions of approval, engineering conditions and things like that, so we can, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So on this matter, 57-2022Z, I think the chairman was going to ask, do you want to vote tonight, or do you want to come back and sum up?
Would it be appropriate to ask the board, to poll the board?
Well, I was going to ask the board if they have any concerns. Now that we've heard the entire testimony that's going to be presented. Again, we only have 5 members here. You're well aware of that. Those at home watching are well aware of that. And you need all 5 votes because it requires a use variance. It's going to require 5 of 7, and we only have 5, so you'd have to have a positive vote from each. And I would do for the applicant to ask anybody again if there is any particular items that they'd like to deal with or that they have a problem with.
We would appreciate hearing
And
from
I'll
board
go
members.
across. I'm not asking for a vote at this juncture.
Understood.
But is there anything else you want to speak about, or you would like to talk about more or concerning this application? And if there is, then that's fine. It's not a problem.
It's not related to the home being built. Mr. Higgins, you brought out that. Mr. Higgins, you brought out that it's not permitted in this ER zone.
That's correct,
That's correct.
yes.
And we're seeing more and more like this, where something's not permitted and they come in front of us and looking for a vote. And it's getting a little, some we say yes, some we say no. It's
Mr. Scogno,
nothing related to that.
Mr. Scogno, if I can just help, I mean, it really is important the board take every application on its own, right? So
Yes.
although we're here twice a month and you hear 3 or 4 applications a night or meeting, every application really has to, you kind of have to have blinders on almost and bring every app and consider every application on its own merit. Now, as the applicant's professionals testified and as Vina confirmed, and I think Vina will stop me if I'm misinterpreting what she said, but this one's a little bit unique in that I guess the township zoning hasn't caught up to this area of town where there's, I think you said there's 2 houses to the north, 4 houses to the south, so they're all elongated parcels of property. So, you know, to your point, people are here to ask for variance relief. That's why you have this board. But to the extent that I think every application you have to kind of judge on its own merit and its own proofs and where the property is and why it's there and all the rest of it. And
Yeah,
being that-
that's why there's the two-proof, basically a two-proof methodology where you have to show special reasons, first of all, which is a positive reason why the variance should be granted, and then show that there's no substantial negative impact to either your zone plan or surrounding properties.
And Jim and Chris, if I may. So, Mr. Scogno, the difference between the regular D applications that you hear and this one, right? So any property owner could come and make a request to build something on their, or develop on their property. In this case, it is unique because, one, it is somewhat our ordinance that is flawed, or whenever the ER zone was established, somebody then did not really go through the inventory to see, because it's strange, and I did that search. I specifically had asked Natalie, can you go and check when were the other properties allowed a D, like were they approved for a D? I called the building department and the zoning office to find out, because I had a lot of questions, especially if you look at the purpose of the ER zone, right? It talks about water table and groundwater and saving the aquifer recharge. So I was very curious when I saw that they're proposing a basement. What I did is I went and pulled out permits on the neighboring homes to see if there are basements in those homes as well, to just make sure that I'm not doing something right. So it's clearly an oversight on whoever rezoned it at that point. And like I said, now, today, I have access to the technology. I have the skills to be able to do that. We have all the softwares available, maybe at that point, because these homes definitely existed before. They didn't come to the zoning board. The other homes which are in the ER zone and are existing. So it was an oversight. I think it's a great use of the property because, like Jim said, the uses that are permitted in the ER zone clearly cannot go onto that property. It will be a hindrance. It will have negative impact on the existing homes, in fact. So it's a very unique situation. So, and also remember, this is the zoning board, right? It is, when the use is not permitted, they are going to come to you. So you're going to see applications that need a use variance or any type of Ds, other than the single-family homes which come for C. But the first meeting of the month is always for all the Ds. So you are going to see the D applications. You are going to see applications where the use is not permitted and they're asking for an exception. I think the board's job is then to see whether the proposed use meets the site suitability criteria, which is the most critical part. And I think Jim did an excellent job. I know he didn't say that the ordinance is flawed. He made his case purely based on the site suitability. So I think they're in good shape.
So the ordinance is something you're working on.
Yes,
going
it is on my
forward
list.
to
I
correct
already
these
started.
ordinances.
Yes, I already started working on it, but then it turned out that I literally need to go through the entire township to see where ER zone is and where there are existing homes and which lots are like these these lots that are sandwiched between existing homes. So it's a lot of work, and as you know, we are short-staffed. The type of redevelopment work we have been doing, we have been super busy, so it took the backseat burner,
If
that's
the
all.
ordinance was corrected.
Yes, they wouldn't be in front
here.
of us.
Okay.
Just to paint the picture, could we pull up the aerial exhibit once more? I think it kind of, so the applicant's lot is highlighted in red. And actually, yeah, if you could zoom in a little bit toward the red lot, you'll see there's 2 lots to the north that are within the same ER zone. Those are both single-family residences. And then to the south, you'll see there's 4 developed lots with single-family residences also located in the ER zone. So Mr. Higgins at one point described this as almost an infill of an existing pattern of single-family residences. So I just wanted to, I know we had it up earlier, but I wanted to bring this exhibit up once more because I think it paints the picture well that what's being proposed really fits in with what's already there.
Well, I respect your comments, Mr. Scogno. Do you have any other concerns?
No, sir, thank you very much.
Mr. Stoner? Mr. Connor?
Mr. Higgins, mic is on. So the testimony says that there's no significant difference in these 2 lots than in the other R20 lots that already have homes on them.
That's correct. If anything, those R20 lots are more intensely developed than what's proposed here.
Thank you. And one last, it appears with the depth of the lot, should there be a condition for no commercial operations?
For no commercial operations, would you?
Yeah, I assume any commercial operation would require a trip back here, but we can certainly make that a condition.
Yes?
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
Plus, that's all wetlands in the back, so they
Wouldn't be able to
can't
do anything
utilize
back
it anyway. Yeah, that's
I
one
will-
more level of a protection. yes.
I'll certainly.
That is the reason why we are requiring them to put a fence as well, so that there is no encroachment into the environmental constrained land.
Very good, thank you.
I just
I'll add that kind of.
thing before we wrap up. I know there is an LOI. Would you provide a copy to our office?
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
What's the total, what'd you say was the frontage off the road? Is 90? Or would you go to 100, you said?
At the
I think the
front
engineer-
setback's about 95 feet.
Right, and to the rear of the home, to the usable portion is?
That I don't know.
It's about 85 to 90 feet.
Right, but the lot goes 900 feet, right, from the front?
Yeah.
From the rear of the house to where we'll put the fence, roughly 80 to 90 feet. So it's a significant depth of the rear yard.
Totally unusable.
Well, I'm sorry. The 90 feet would be the usable, then quote-unquote unusable. I mean, you can walk through there, what have you, but as far as any improvements, that's not allowed.
So roughly the front 200 feet of the lot would be developed, and the remaining 700 feet would be undeveloped.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews?
No, I was just wondering, it seems to conform with back, front, and sides. There's nothing else other than the D1 variance? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there's no bulks. No bulk.
Yeah, just to clarify, there's no bulk standards for single-family residences, but it does conform to the R20 and R30 standards, which are the surrounding residential communities.
Okay, your choice, sir. You want to wait and have the other members of the board get to read the transcript and come back for that vote?
I think that might be the conservative approach. I think that's.
I think it's, in fairness to the applicant, I think there are concerns. I don't know, other people might have concerns, so I don't think it would harm you to wait.
Sure.
Yes,
Is it open to the public at all?
we did,
we did?
and no one has come forward. And we closed that public portion.
In that case, we will elect to come back. We'll provide the transcript for all of the board members and the absent board members, and we'll conclude the presentation subsequent meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, we're going to conclude it on 57, 2022Z. We'll take a vote, and then we'll open up the hearing, if you will, after, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, everybody understand, we're going to close this one for now, and you'll come back for a vote. Okay. And we'll open up the new one, right?
Correct.
All right, the 57, 2022 has come to a conclusion for the evening. There'll be no more testimony. There will be further date, and what would that date be? Ms. C, what would the next date be for this?
That would be June 1st.
Are you going to be able to get a transcript by then?
Yeah, we can circulate it.
All right, so there's no further testimony on this matter tonight. It will be continued June 1st, no further notice.
Could we request that no further notice is required for the subsequent application, that's number 58?
Well, we're going to open that up.
You're open that up at the next hearing, right?
Well, I thought we were going to open that one up tonight.
Well, procedurally, I'll defer to you. I'm asking if we can proceed without the requirement to renotice as
Yeah,
to.
well, and maybe it's my misunderstanding. If you want to open up 58, incorporate the testimony, I just thought you would want to have a vote on one first before you open up hearing for the other one, but.
We can open it for the sole purpose of incorporating the testimony.
Sure. All right, if you want to open up 58, 2022Z, we'll
Okay,
just
so-
incorporate it.
Yeah,
That's
this
fine.
one is closed, and it's going to be set for June 1, no further notice.
Okay.
Next application in front of the board tonight is 58-2022Z. It's Aleza Centipal. Again, the ER Environmental Incentive Zone, Block 13005, Lot 56, location 123 Wesley Road, new single-family home requiring D variance. Jared Pape, Esquire, representing the applicant.
As discussed, the plan here is to incorporate all the testimony from the prior application into this application, as they are essentially identical applications. And we would request to also have this adjourned to the next meeting on June 1st with no requirement to renotice.
Mr. Pape and your client will agree to comply with all of the conditions in the engineering review memorandum of the board's professionals, correct?
Yes.
And I'm just going to ask Mr. Rosati and Mr. Higgins just to come up real fast.
They are, you're going to have to swear them again.
You're both sworn. Mr. Rosati, will you raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board? Yes, I do. Mr. Higgins, will you raise your right hand? You swear affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board?
Yes.
And you both, let's go one at a time. Mr. Rosati, you testified on the previous application, 57-2022Z, correct? Yes. And you agree that your testimony in this matter would be substantially similar to the testimony in the previous application? Yes. And you agree to incorporate and rely upon your testimony in the previous application in this application? Yes. And there's no material changes or exceptions that you're taking from that testimony, from that hearing to this one, correct? Thank you. Mr. Higgins, you testified previously in 57-2022Z, correct?
That's correct.
And is your testimony that the proofs are the exact same in this application?
Yes, it will be exactly the same.
Exactly the same testimony, exactly the same conditions of approval, correct?
Yes.
And there was no material changes or differences between the previous application and this application?
No changes whatsoever.
And you agree to rely upon your previous testimony in the previous application to this application?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, and then if there's nothing else.
Would I need to open a
Yeah,
public portion, right?
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, this is matter 58-2022Z, location again, 123 Wesley Road, for a new single-family home. Is there anyone here in the courtroom this evening that wants to be heard on this matter? Please raise your hand or stand. No one has, I'll close the public portion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll close the public portion, and this matter will be carried to June 1 of 2023 without further notice.
Okay, Mr. Pape,
Thank you very much.
thank you and your experts for your testimony this evening and the presentation.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, our esteemed planner would like to.
We're going to take a quick 5-minute recess for TV and those watching at home. We will be back. We have one final matter. We're going to let the stenographer and the board get a quick stretch. We stand in recess. We returned from recess. I would ask for a roll call, please, Ms. C.
Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Yeah.
Ms. Andrews,
Here.
Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Mr. Dasty. Here. Ms. Sawant,
Here.
and myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. C. We have one final application for the evening. The number is 02-2023Z. It's Mohanad Habash. The zone is the EDO1, Block 10, Lot 316, physical location 301 Route 35. Major preliminary and final site plan of the D variance for a billiards hall. Lawrence B. Sachs, Esquire, representing the applicant. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Lawrence Sachs, on behalf of the applicant Mohanad Habash. This property is located at 301 Route 35, Block 10, Lot 316. This property is the Harbor Plaza Shopping Center, which is on Route 35. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. What we are seeking this evening is a D1 use variance to convert an existing limited hours furniture store to a billiards facility. And this property is located in the EDO1 zone. Interestingly, the EDO1 zone does not permit recreational facilities and billiard facilities. And when I think about this application and I look at your zoning, this is probably another example of zoning that possibly needs to be changed in the future. And I know that that's probably going to happen. But nonetheless, we do require a use variance for this. I'm reminded of the movie and the musical, The Music Man, when I think about billiard facilities. We got trouble here in River City. Back in the 1950s, billiard facilities were frowned upon. They were areas of ill repute, and they had a certain stigma attached. That's not the case any longer. This facility will not serve any alcohol, so it will be a fun and friendly place for people to engage in billiards. And it's, again, it's similar to other uses which this board has approved in the past. I think back to the hatchet throwing use that's on Route 34. Again, you certainly can't envision every use, but anyway, nonetheless, we do need a D1 use variance. And we also need preliminary and final site plan because of the parking requirements of this site. And you're going to hear ample testimony from our professional engineer and planner that we do satisfy the parking on this because, interestingly, the peak hours of operation of a billiards facility, as Mr. Lieber will tell you, is after 9 p.m. When all of the other tenants are out. So we'll have use of the entire parking lot. So before I have Mr. Lieber sworn in, Ms. C., I assume we have jurisdiction for this application this evening?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I really only have one witness this evening, who will be Mr. Mark Lieber, who is a professional engineer and professional planner. My client is here as well, as is the landlord, if there's any questions, but I think everything can be covered by Mr. Lieber.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Lieber. Can you raise your right hand, please, sir? Do you swear affirm and testify truthfully in this matter before the board? Yes. And can we have your name again, sir?
Mark, M-A-R-C. Last name is Lieber, L-E-B-E-R.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Lieber, if you can give the board the benefit of your professional education and background.
Hi, good evening. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Drexel University. After graduation, I went back part-time in the evening to complete the MBA program at Rutgers Graduate School and was licensed in 2003 as a professional engineer. In 2005, I was licensed as a planner, and in 2006, I completed the Certified Municipal Engineering Certificate Program. Since then, I've worked on both the public and the private side of this business. Presently at East Point Engineering, our office is in Marlborough. Testified before this board as well as your planning board.
All right, and your licenses are in good standing for both professional engineering and professional planning?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Mr. Lieber has testified before this board, and he should be known to most of us anyway. We will accept his credentials.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lieber, if you could give the board the benefit of your review of the proposed use here, vis-à-vis the shopping center itself, and I know focusing, I think, importantly on parking, which is really the main issue.
Yes. So again, this is Block 10, Lot 316. It is Harbor Plaza. You might have recalled the site plan application to construct this building. It's a .86 acre corner, not a corner lot, but it's near Lawrence Park, where the only parcel in between is a gas station. There's some dwellings to the north. There are other commercial establishments to the west and the south. It is in the EDO1 zone. And the application tonight does not seek any changes to the building, whether in square footage or in the facade. There would be some renovation to the tenant space on the far left, which was last used as a furniture store. There are 47 parking stalls on the property. We're not looking to change that as well. And the ingress and egress from the state highway would remain as is. Given the nature of the use and the fact that this is not addressed specifically in your code with regard to parking, we did our own parking study to determine what would be an appropriate number of parking spaces for this type of use. Prior to doing that, we looked at the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual. That's a compilation of national studies based upon different uses, where they try and tie either the number of parking spaces to the square foot of the use, or perhaps in a restaurant, the number of seats. So they had only one study in 1990 on a billiard hall, and they concluded that the average parking demand was 6.56 spaces per 1,000 square feet and 2.89 spaces per billiard table. So when the application was submitted, we indicated there'd be 15 tables, and using the ratios from this national study at one location generated a parking requirement of 70.9 spaces. Now, in the IT manual, it does state that due to the small sample size, it must be used with caution. So what I decided to do here was to look at two existing billiard halls. Both of them are in Edison, New Jersey. The first one is Elite Billiards, which is at 519 Old Post Road. They have 25 tables and 3 ping pong tables. And this site is located in a small multi-tenant strip center that's shared with a nail salon and a Dunkin' Donuts, and they have 38 parking stalls there. The other location is Q-Zone Billiards, which is at 1824 Route 27, again in Edison. And inside they have 11 billiard tables. Now that property is somewhat different. It has a multi-tenant strip mall shared with a Chinese restaurant and a liquor store, but there's also a freestanding sub shop on the property. And the total number of parking stalls at that site is 37. So we visited these properties in November during the daytime and in the evenings and on the weekend of November 19th. And what we found is, unsurprisingly, the peak use of the parking lot is on the weekend. For example, at Elite Billiards, the number of occupied spaces was 34 out of 38 spaces for their 25 tables. At Q-Zone, we found 31 occupied spaces out of 37 available spaces for that particular use, which has 11 tables. So we took that data, we tried to figure out, okay, if we divide the number of occupied spaces by the number of tables, we could come up with our own ratio of how many spaces per table seems practical. So for Elite Billiards, we took the 34 occupied spaces divided by 25 tables, and we got 1.36 spaces per table. And then at Q-Zone, it came up with a higher ratio, which was 31 occupied spaces divided by 11 tables was 2.82 vehicles per table. So being conservative, I just took the higher number, which was 2.82. And if I multiply that by 15 tables in the application tonight, I get 42 spaces. Again, this property has 47 spaces. Bless you. So the next step was to look at the tenant mix of the shopping center. On the right side, you have the UPS store. They're open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if anyone's used a place like that, it's mostly walk-in. People have a package to mail or a return they want to send out, go there, it's weighed, put a label on it, and it's shipped. And the reason I point that out is because it's not the type of use where people spend a lot of time there. The next one was the furniture store, which was open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., which is the space that's in question tonight. There's also a store called Groomer's Boutique. Now, they have posted hours from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., but it appears that that business is largely an online type of a business. There's a vape store that's open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and that's about 1,300 square feet of the center. And lastly is the Chinese restaurant, China Royal. They're open 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. They take up about 1,000 square feet. And again, that's another type of use that's takeout. They don't have a large dining room. A lot of the pickup and delivery is probably customers placing their own orders or perhaps Uber picking it up. So when I looked at that and then compared to the proposed hours of operation for the billiard use, which are 11 a.m. to 2 a.m., it seems that the time when the billiard use would most be occupied is in the evenings and perhaps would overlap with 1 hour of when the Chinese restaurant's open. All the other uses in the shopping center would be closed. So if we were conservatively planning on occupying 42 spaces, I'm very comfortable that there is enough parking on this property to occupy the use. And again, that's using the higher ratio as applied to the number of tables here. So that was my parking analysis.
And Mr. Lee, but before you go into some of the planning, just a couple things, just so the board is aware. So basically, you looked at the ITE standards.
I did.
Which is really just empirical data nationwide. It's not necessarily site-specific. You also did field studies at other locations, albeit not in Old Bridge, but to get a feel for what a billiards facility generates. That was your field observation.
Exactly.
All right. And as well, you also looked at the township code requirements. And by the way, before you get to the township code requirements, you took a conservative number of, with your Edison analysis of about 42 spaces being required. Now, how about the township code requirements? How do we deal with that issue?
So because it wasn't specifically called out in the code, I was trying to find maybe a similar use. And they did have a line for indoor tennis or a bowling alley, which was 4 spaces per tennis court or 4 spaces per lane. So it's not an exact match, but I figured if we took 4 per court or 4 per lane and applied it to 15 tables, that would yield 30 spaces, which is still below the 42 spaces that I calculated just by running around doing my own study. So, I mean, if you wanted to go with the township code requirements, it seems that we would have more than enough space. Now, again, the emphasis here is that we're not overlapping our peak operation with the peak of any of the other businesses in the shopping center. So I think it's a good fit for this particular space.
All right. And in terms of the peak hour for this type of use would be after 9 p.m. and primarily on the week, on a Friday night and on a Saturday night?
Yes, 9 p.m.
Okay. All right. And in terms of the number of employees, I guess you were advised that they would have 3 employees on site?
Yes.
Okay. There'd be no alcohol served at this location, correct?
No, and there's no smoking either.
Okay. They will serve snacks and soft drinks. There's not going to be any kitchen.
No kitchen.
All right. How about deliveries? Any deliveries expected?
There's no deliveries anticipated for this type of use, but they do receive FedEx and Amazon, which is typical.
Okay. Okay. I guess now maybe, well, actually, let's just talk about the layout as well. I know we submitted some plans here from an architect. It showed some ping pong tables. Those are going to be eliminated. Is that correct?
Yeah, the plan you're referring to is the one from March 30th by Paul Rodick. And you could look, this is the end of the building. The entrance is off to the left. And when you look at this plan, you have right in front of you 5 pool tables. There's a very small office. There's 2 bathrooms. And then you have another 6 tables. So that's 11. And there's 2 ping pong tables in the back. But if those were to be used as pool tables, you'd have 13. Now, our report was for 15 tables. And the reason for that is because my report was done in November. And at the time, we were just working off of a sketch of how to lay this out. We didn't have the benefit of all the dimensions you have on the plan that dictate that you need the 10 feet between tables and things like that. And also tables come in different sizes. So this plan was generated with, the actual 9-foot tables laid out in the space, to avoid the bathrooms, walls, and other interference.
And we're also going to be bound by whatever the fire marshal occupancy indicates as well.
That's correct.
So the 2 ping pong tables will be eliminated, and those will be substituted with pool tables. All right. Mr. Chairman, I know Mr. Lieber is going to talk about planning as well. If you want, I can get into that now with him, or if the board has any questions regarding the parking.
Why don't we see if there's any questions up to now, and then we can move forward. Mr. Wan.
I don't have any questions for Mark, except for one, and I think that will help the board. China Royal, right? You said it's 1,000 square feet. Can you testify as to the use of the restaurant in the sense that, in your experience, 1,000 square feet restaurant, what can it really yield?
Yeah, and in fact, Mr. Lieber, you're aware that China
Royal.
China Royal does not have any waitress service. Is that correct?
Right. There's maybe 3 tables in there. And when you talk about the type of generation of traffic to a restaurant, it's always tied to the number of seats, not necessarily the square footage of the restaurant, because obviously restaurants are 60 to 70% kitchen.
So would you agree that it is mostly a takeout type of a use?
It's 99% takeout.
Yes.
So
it's
which
essential
means,
takeout.
because typically when you say a restaurant, that is considered to be a high parking demand kind of a use, right? But when it is takeout, it's completely different. You don't require as much parking as a regular restaurant would use, correct?
Yes, people are not spending a lot of time there. They're coming to pick up food and then they're leaving.
So, couple of things. I just want to give a background to the board, especially because Mr. Sachs had made a comment that this type of use should have been permitted in EDO 1, right? It wasn't really an oversight, but the zone, if you all recall, this used to be the CN zone before, neighborhood commercial zone, right? And then before I took office, there was an EDO zone created, EDO 1 and EDO 3. If you look at EDO 1, it is primarily really along Route 34, originally when it was zoned. Later on, when I came in, and I'm like, what's the point having CN zone and EDO 1 zone when the standards are kind of identical? So I went and I completely got rid of the CN zone, and that was replaced by EDO 1 zone. Now, when we did that, obviously it's not site-specific. I'm looking at the entire township and rezoning it to EDO 1 zone, right? But if you look at Lawrence Harbor, it's unique. Originally, EDO 1 was along Route 34, where we have shopping centers that have a lot of uses, there are a lot of restaurants, and there is enough parking, but it's not like there is ample vacant parking spots during the day. Lawrence Harbor, in opposite to that, is unique because at some point, it is the township's vision to improve or revitalize that waterfront. We, all of you know that the town has been in litigation with the cleanup on the waterfront. So right now, nobody can have access, but we're very close to getting access to the waterfront. I don't know if the board members have heard my presentation on March 23rd, where I went in front of the planning board and did an area investigation study for that area, where the planning board passed a resolution recommending to the council that that whole area be designated as an area in need of redevelopment. At that meeting, Mayor Henry too spoke to the residents and informed them that we are close to getting, the waterfront cleanup, and we will have access in future. I'm giving you all this background just to say that the vision for this area is much greater. We want, when you have a waterfront, like if you go to Keensburg, if you go to any of the any of the towns that have a beachfront, recreational facilities like that are very common. Having arcades, it's very common because kids want to go late in the evening on Friday evenings, Saturday evenings. When you visit the beach, you want to go to these places. So at that time when EDO 1 was written, I always knew that I would be writing a redevelopment study. There would be a redevelopment plan, and that would be my chance to include such uses within the plan. We haven't come to that stage. We're still far away, and that's why a use variance is required, because I know I had got a call from one of the board members asking, I'm so surprised, it's an economic development zone. Why is a billiard place not allowed? But that was the rationale behind it, that at some point we would have to re-examine this area and allow more uses. This shopping center has been struggling to find tenants in the past. This is a great use for the property, and I know I'm getting into the use, but it's all related to the parking as well, because when a parking variance is sought, something that I specifically look at is the peak times, because our ordinance, the way it's written, it does not allow for shared parking arrangements. It does not take into consideration that different uses have different peak times. And I always give this example. A breakfast place might need parking. Their peak time is in the morning up to 2 o'clock. But after 2 o'clock, that use doesn't really need parking. Whereas if it's a fine dine restaurant, which generally has a peak time from 6 in the evening to 10 or 11 p.m. in the night. And so if you have such type of uses within a shopping center, you don't need to provide the required 100 parking spaces, because then you're creating more impervious coverage. And I'm giving you all this background because the client is asking for parking variance, so that you understand. I agree with Mr. Lieber's testimony. I don't have any questions specific to those.
Thank you. Board members to my left of the witness up to now. He's going to continue on in another fashion.
Well, thank you very much. So your application indicates billiards, but yet there's a pool table, there's a billiard table, there's a snooker table. I mean, billiards is alone by itself. Pool table measures 10 feet by 5. A billiards is 8 feet by 4. A snooker table is 12 feet by 6.
These are 9-foot pool tables.
Excuse me?
These are 9-foot pool tables.
No, I'm saying, now you're saying it's a pool table.
Yeah, Mr. Scogno may
Billiard,
not.
yeah.
I may have inartfully used the term billiard. These are pool tables.
Pool tables, but you will have billiard tables?
No, I don't believe so. I think they're strictly pool tables.
All pool tables?
pool tables,
No other type of tables? And what's the hours of,
The proposed hours of operation?
yes,
They're going to open at 11 in the morning, but I don't anticipate they're going to have much activity, but they'll go to 2 a.m. would be the latest,
2 a.m.?
2 a.m.
So we know there's no alcohol. Can someone bring food and beverage in?
I'm sure they could. We are going to have snacks and, and soft drinks available for them, but certainly somebody could bring, if they wanted to bring a sandwich in, they could certainly bring that in. I would not see.
Yeah, a lot of these places allow you to bring something to eat and stuff like that. Signage, how is the signage going to be handled?
Signage will be facade signage on the shopping center, so we're just going to utilize the existing furniture store signage that's there. We're not seeking any variance for that. There's a pylon sign out front, and we'll just utilize whatever the remaining space is.
And 2 o'clock in the morning, how about lighting?
Well, the shopping center is lit. I mean, obviously, it will remain lit, during those hours. I would imagine the interior lights for the other tenants will be out, but certainly there'll be parking lot lighting on, which I think is on all evening anyway.
And other residents in that area always feared walking in that area. So you'll be mostly people driving to your establishment. And I don't see much walking there as people coming from a beach or something like that. I don't see it safe at all. And I don't see families playing pool 2 o'clock in the morning as a family type of thing. I don't know who you're going to be bringing in there at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I could tell you this, the 2 o'clock in the morning, the 2 a.m. closing time was what we were requesting. Certainly, if the board has any other thoughts on that, we'll take, we certainly could consider that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on my left?
Yeah, I have a question. What's the capacity of people in this particular place?
Well, that's going to have to be determined by the fire marshal, but,
So you haven't determined that yet?
yeah, and that would be something that would be determined at the once we apply for a C of O.
And you said no alcohol, right?
That's right.
So how you monitor that?
What was that?
How would you monitor that?
No alcohol?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we don't have a liquor license, so it would be against New Jersey law for us to have anybody come into that facility with alcohol. It'll be monitored, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Khan? I would comment that billiards is a common term, and if you look up any of these, that's what they refer to them as, elite billiards. And the one on Old Post is also called a billiard hall, although I don't think anybody plays billiards unless you live in the mansion from Clue. So, any comments over here?
I'm sure there are.
Oh, I bet, yeah,
I'm sure
but
there are.
it's a rarity.
And ping pong tables and shuffleboard.
Right. These are just going to be pool tables, though.
Ms. Andrews?
I just wonder, any age limit, in other words, under 18? And not bringing alcohol in? In other words, no alcohol permitted in?
No, there's no alcohol permitted inside.
In other words, you can't bring it in yourself? A
No,
beer and a
no.
sandwich?
You can't bring it in, you can't consume it. And in terms of the age, I don't believe there's any state regulation that limits the age of a pool or billiards facility. I would imagine that's going to be as well controlled by the applicant.
Okay, I don't have an objection to 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm a night owl, but I do object to 11 o'clock that early, only because of children.
Yeah, we could consider that hour.
Cutting
yeah.
school,
Yeah.
because that's really, sounds very, very tempting.
Yeah, in fact, thinking about it, maybe the only time we would want it open at 11 is maybe on a weekend when school's not in session. I don't disagree with you, Ms. Andrews. So we can modify that hour.
Now, is there, I understand across the street from this facility, there is a topless bar that doesn't serve alcohol?
That is correct.
Is there any way of preventing some people who do bring in their own alcohol to that bar from coming in and kind of starting a bit of a row? Because that's my concern. My concern is not so much a pool hall or a billiard hall, because I think I have one in my complex. I don't consider it irreputable. I do consider the facility across the street irreputable, and I just would hate to see them coming into something that could be a good move for the area and disturbing it. So is there any way there would be some way of keeping people that are kind of rowdy out?
Well, Ms. Andrews, if I can help, I mean, certainly a business owner would have a vested interest in making sure that rowdy people aren't in their business and breaking the law, be that underage kids playing pool, if that's even a law, or drinking. So, I mean, certainly the owner, the tenant, the landlord, they would call the police department. I mean, a violation of the law is a violation of the law, so.
Yeah, and we would not want to have any disruptive activity occurring, because obviously that's not going to be good for the business. So that's an issue that could be self-controlled by the owner. Thank you. Okay.
Chairman, I just wanted to say something. In terms of Roseanne's comment, right? How do you really stop somebody who has gone to a facility outside the town from stopping by, right? You cannot. You're on Route 35. So there's no way of us policing that. The other thing is with the billiard place, actually, Mr. Scagno, that's an excellent question because the zoning office and the planning office had the same question. And we were trying to figure this out, but when we saw the layout, it was quite evident that this is designed for just pools. But because of the name, and then the zoning officer told me that, Bina, if you look at other facilities similar to this, all of them are called billiard homes. So we did look into that when we received the application.
On uses on the code that I looked up the other night, in the CC zone had billiards as a conditionally permitted use.
That is correct.
And that was the former.
No, that was the CN zone. See, I really don't know why, and it has been a challenge why Old Bridge created so many zones, because CC and CN is identical, and then you pick and choose certain uses, and we have 45 zones, excluding the town center sub-districts. I have not come across so many zones in the past. And the township attorney and and the zoning officer, we have been brainstorming to see how we can clean up the zoning map, because we have 45 zones, we have almost 10 or 12 sub-districts in the town center, and then also we have cluster zones that were created. There are 29 cluster zones. So it's a major task to clean up the zoning map, but yes, the CC zone is different from the CN zone.
And to your knowledge, is playing pool prohibited in any bar?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Back to you, Mr. Sachs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. But before we get to planning, one other question, Mr. Lieber. This site plan was approved, I guess, back around 2013 or so, maybe a little earlier. Is that correct?
States it was filed in 11, so
Okay.
could be.
All right. And at that time, this board, I don't know if it was this board or the planning board, obviously reviewed the traffic circulation into the site, the ingress and egress is off Route 35. Obviously, Middlesex County reviewed it, and in fact, the New Jersey Department of Transportation. And the configuration that is laid out here is actually approved by the Township of Old Bridge, State of New Jersey, and Middlesex County?
It is.
All right. The number of parking spaces was obviously set in stone at that time. There's no ability to provide additional parking, is that correct?
No, I think the shopping center was deficient by one space in the old application. I think they needed 48 and they had 47.
All right, so variance was granted presumably.
Yeah.
And we're not making any changes to the footprint of this shopping center with respect to this application?
No changes.
Okay. I don't have any further questions on engineering or traffic or parking. If I can, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have Mr. Lieber go into his planning testimony.
That just to refresh your memory, that was done by the zoning board, and it used to be the old McKittrick's there, and that was taken down, and the strip mall was built.
Okay.
I don't know, I thought it was 11, but it may have been a different year.
Okay.
But back to you.
All right, so Mr. Lieber, why don't you get into your planning proofs? Obviously, we'll require a D1 use variance, and you'll have to go through site suitability and special reasons. Why don't you do that?
Sure. You know, this tenant space is vacant. Vacant spaces are generally not good. When you have a lot of vacancies, it feeds upon itself, and other people are not drawn to the center when there's a large vacancy, especially when it's one of the larger spaces. Now, in the zone where there's a variety of uses that are perhaps permitted, not everything is practical in the sense, for example, retail. Nobody's going to be opening up a shoe store or a shirt shop or, any kind of a use like that. So looking at alternative uses, I defer back to what the municipal law states about promoting sufficient spaces for a variety of uses, including recreational uses. That's one of the goals of planning in the land use law. In this particular case, what makes this location so wonderful is the fact that it's located on a state highway. It has very good access. I think it's a complementary use to the work which will be happening at some point along the waterfront. If you look at the aerial map as part of the planning report, I think this is actually an excellent exhibit. You could see the proximity of this property to not only the waterfront, but the neighborhood in general. If somebody wanted to walk here, they could certainly walk to the shopping center. And that is also a big benefit. I reviewed the EDO 1 development ordinance, and in that zone, it states that the purpose to permit on a small scale is uses to allow Old Bridge Township to attain the goals of accommodating market forces, increasing the ratable base, expanding the local and regional jobs base, providing a more diverse mix of goods and services to residents and businesses within the municipality and region. And it's emphasized that utilizing suitable land for development in a more efficient, functional, and aesthetic manner while controlling and maintaining highway access and traffic congestion, minimizing impacts on adjacent nearby residential development, and protecting environmentally sensitive areas. To me, this type of a use in an existing shopping center is a perfect match. And I know you had mentioned earlier that there are residents in the area. And one of the nice features of the fact of the way that this center is laid out is that there are no parking spaces behind the building. All the parking spaces are in the front. You don't have to drive through a residential neighborhood to get here. It's a right-in, right-out only on the state highway. And I think that that is very much in line with the ED01 zone purpose. Now, in the master plan reexamination report, there was something noted on page 27 that I thought was interesting. It said current EDO zones have a purpose of encouraging the development of businesses and non-residential uses. The land uses permitted in the EDO1 and EDO3 zones should be studied to determine whether they should be expanded to create greater flexibility and diversity that would strengthen the local economy and benefit Old Bridge Township. Now, again, this use is allowed in the EDO3 zone, not in the 1 zone, but expanding flexibility and diversity is a very bold statement, especially when economic forces change much faster than ordinances can change. And I think that this use being complementary to the existing building and the fact that we are filling a vacancy and providing a recreational use which has a benefit to the neighborhood in general with its location to the beach furthers that statement. And just in general, recreational uses are becoming more and more popular. I don't have to go through details on the explosion of those uses and why, but if you drive around, you'll see a lot of indoor trampoline parks, climbing facilities. They have this new thing, Kids Empire, which is for younger kids. It's like a giant indoor playground. It's no accident that these things are popping up everywhere because people are looking for recreational uses, not just for them, but for their families as well. Having young children, somewhere to go for a birthday party, and things like that. This would provide a huge benefit. There was a discussion about detriments, perhaps if we were creating a nuisance. We appear to be satisfying what the anticipated parking demand is. Again, this is not a smoking hall. It's not a place to go drinking. So I don't feel that we're creating any kind of a nuisance. When I visited the other 2 billiard halls in Edison, they seem to be very low-key, and they've been established there for many, many years. I'd also want to mention that the site is particularly suited for this use. If you go to the master plan reexamination report on page 16, it states that the town should address an underserved use in Old Bridge, and it references the open space and recreation element. The quote there is, as the community continues to grow and demographics change, particularly with the growth of an aging population and the millennial generation, they always skip over Generation X for some reason, which is those born in the early 80s to the mid-90s, the demand for both passive and active open space and recreation will likely increase. And I believe that this type of use addresses this reasonable and desirable recreational need because it does provide an opportunity which is provide it indoors, away from things that could affect this type of use should it be outdoors. I think it's a positive addition to the shopping mall. Again, I think a vacancy is a tremendous detriment to any community. I don't think we're impairing the purpose or intent of your master plan or the zone plan. I don't find any detrimental impacts to the property or the surrounding neighbors. And at the end of the day, I think that the key to planning is compatibility. Is what we're doing compatible with what's there now? And I think it is. It's compatible with both the other tenants in the center. It's compatible with its location on the state highway. We're not changing this building in any way, shape, or form. And I think that this is a viable use. I think it would be there for many years. I'm hoping that everybody here would frequent it. But I'm offering this testimony so that the board can make an informed decision tonight.
Mr. Lieber, one last thing. I know that you prepared a community impact statement dated March 21st, 2023.
Yes.
And in that statement, you indicated that this particular use will have no impact on population, obviously no impact on the public schools, since it's not generating any school-age children. Refuse will be private removal, as it presently is. The water and sewer impact will be negligible. We have just one bathroom in there and no kitchen. Actually, two bathrooms, one for male, one female. Snow removal impact does not require snow removal services. Street lighting and electrical impact, it's all obviously charged by the landlord to the tenant. Stormwater management, no impacts, et cetera. So based on your community impact statement, nothing has changed. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questioning of Mr. Lieber at this point. Certainly, he's available for any board questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs, Mr. Lieber. Ms. Sawant?
I don't have any questions.
I'll go to my left. Any further questions on the planning aspect? I was looking at Mr. Scott.
Is there any room for the 2 a.m.? I mean, it's ridiculous. Who do you think you're going to get there at 2 o'clock in the morning?
When they close it.
Yeah, they close at 2, okay. 1:45.
Mr. Scogno, I could talk to my client about
I mean,
that. Yeah.
the crime in the harbor is not going down, it's going up.
No, I understand that, but obviously, you know what, I think we have to view this use just like we have viewed other uses over the year. I know that there has been a stigma, and it's probably not justified in 2023, that billiards or a pool attracts a nasty crowd, so to speak. I don't think that's the case. I think this is a family activity. It's an activity. Listen, Mr. Scott, I'm not going there at 2 in the morning, okay? But my son, who's 30, probably would if it was open. But I do agree that perhaps we can modify the hours, certainly on the weekdays. I don't think we need to be open till 2 a.m. on the weekdays. Certainly, I think Friday and Saturday night, you know, that could be our busy night. And certainly, we want to make sure that this applicant succeeds and that this shopping center thrives. So we could consider closing earlier on a weeknight. If you give me a minute, or let me ask you, Mr. Scott, you have a suggestion as to what hours you would like to see? 12 o'clock. All right. Well, no, but I know that there are people who would.
Mr. Sachs, perhaps
I can answer.
your planner could testify as to what the hours of the other places.
That's
that
exactly
Absolutely,
what
you could do that, Mark.
yes.
Sure, the ones in
You said
Edison.
that already. You said it, I missed it.
Did I bring that with me? So the Elite Billiards is open 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. That's daily. Q-Zone is open noon to 2 a.m., and again, that's daily. You know, I don't want to go into a whole dissertation about, you know, hours of operation, and it does come up a lot of times, particularly when we're doing restaurants and things that stay open. When most of the people are home and in bed, there's a whole other group of workers out there that are really working for us, whether it's in hospitals or in warehouses, shipping goods, and providing services that we all take for granted that occur in the evening when we're in bed. For someone who is getting off at a shift at, 9 o'clock at night, maybe wants to meet a friend, you might be meeting your friend for lunch on a Saturday, but they might be meeting their friend in the evening. And these types of uses provide that opportunity for those people to do what you and I probably do every day, but they can't because they're working in the hours that we're not.
Mr. Chairman, I did speak to my client. We could consider modifying the hours somewhat. I mean, certainly maybe on a Friday or Saturday night, 1 a.m. instead of 2 a.m. And on the weeknights, I don't think we need to be open till 1 a.m., so we could close earlier than that, maybe 11, midnight. I mean, I don't want to hamstring the operator.
I think that's generous, but we don't put that restriction on liquor licenses in this.
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
Liquor licenses are allowed to be open till 2 a.m. between Sunday through Thursday, and on Friday and Saturday nights, they're allowed to operate till 3 a.m. And that is set by local law, not by state law. So that's the ordinances of this township. So I don't know why we would restrict someone from doing business, because if the peak need for this particular type of recreation begins at 9, I would think you probably do about 4 hours of everything. And when you go out to a movie, it probably takes you, by the time you see it and get there early, it's about a 4-hour venture. And probably when you go out to dinner with your wife and a couple, maybe another couple, it's probably a 4-hour venture. So I don't see restricting, I don't know what the point of restricting is. I don't know what another hour it gets.
Yeah.
If it were fear of robberies or something that they looked at with gas stations years ago, or no single attendant, I understand that. In passive recreation, I don't get it. And I don't see restricting a man's business where that might be his sweet spot. That might be where the money is. I doubt the money is probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon, unless, as Mr. Lieber points out, there's all different factions of workers. There's worker bees around the clock. You and I may have a 9-to-5 job, and you don't have a 9-to-5 job as an attorney. But most people have, an 8 to 4. But people work shifts, and there should be passive recreation, I think. And I don't know what time the axe place closes, but I know we granted an axe throwing, and I think they're probably similar situations. At least that's the way I see it. So I think it's a generous offer, and if it's needed to be restricted and the board feels so, I don't see it as such. Anybody else on my left for comments?
I don't see it as a restriction either. I think you should be. I don't see it as a restriction, so I think you should stay open at 2.
Am I right, Ms. Andrews? I have nothing. Oh, okay.
As I said, I'm a night owl. If I were young, I would be there late. Now, no. But I don't see a restriction for the evening, because I think it's primarily something that adults are going to be doing, and I think they will be going in after work for something. I don't like it early during the day, only because I know kids cut school, and it sounds exciting, more so than math and science. So that would, the only restriction I have is the daytime, not nighttime.
I understand.
There's a lot of geometry, in you could get extra points for it.
I'm not going into high school.
And by the way, if we did agree to a restriction on the hours for opening, I think we could agree that, well, first of all, I think the 11 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday is important, because you could attract birthday parties and families. Weekdays, we probably could open a little bit later.
Well, I just want to add not to forget that in the summer and during school holidays, those fall during the week. I don't know that the applicant wants to have a restriction that they can open until 12 on a Tuesday when kids are off for spring break or something.
We could probably modify it during school during the 9 months of school. So we could agree to that, but that's for further discussion. So
Where are we at? You have no further?
I have no further testimony. I will indicate, just for the record, I do have the proposed operators and the landlord of the shopping center. I can speak on his behalf. He obviously would love to see this use going here. The shopping center has had issues in terms of attracting tenants financially, and I think it would certainly be, you know, a good thing for the neighborhood and also for the owner of the shopping center as well.
Well, I know we've talked many times on this dais about vacant stores. It almost leads to blight, and you don't want that to happen to a community, and you don't want that to happen to shopping districts or use districts for recreation. It is a nice strip mall that they put up there, and I'd hate to see a vacancy, and I kind of think, I don't think there's a demand for furniture stores anymore. And I'm sure he could get up and testify to that, and I don't know, but there are fewer and fewer, and all the big ones left, and via Huffman Koos, and you don't even see barely any Raymore and Flanagan's around. So
I agree,
that's
Mr.
an
Chairman.
online, I think that's an online issue too, or it's become. I would hate to see the place go vacant. I think it's a good passive use, but that's just my opinion.
Chairman, I just want to chime in. I was quickly looking up for other billiard places. It's very typical for them to be open till 2 a.m.
Yeah, I think
just went and I
Mr. Lever
searched up.
put that on the record, at least the ones that he
Yep.
saw. Yeah, it's going to attract, you know, your son's age, you say 30, you know, it's going to attract the 30 to 40-year-olds, I'm sure, and perhaps older, but I don't think the youth are going to be out there at 11 or, you know, so I would hope not. It would be rather bad parenting. Well, hold on, so, wait a minute. You want to bring him up? I'll bring him up. You can swear him in. Come on up. We're getting near the curfew anyway.
Yeah, but it's a long day. But
Hold on, sir.
I need you to raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear affirm to testify the truth in this matter for the board?
yes, I do.
Can we have your name, sir?
Rajesh Desai. First name is Vrajesh. Last name is Desai.
Go ahead, Mr. Desai.
So, good evening, Chairman and members of the board. Yes, I am the owner of the plaza. I've been here before, and even while we're doing it, I was several times. And I think that part of the Lawrence Harbor, which is, I've been there 40 years. I have a pharmacy there, and that's the reason. Used to be a restaurant there, old beat-up restaurant, and then we cleaned up and did the plaza. And yes, there is a challenges for getting the tenants, which is because of the dense population, right? Back of us is all water. Right? So, but I think this will be better than having a use on the basketball court and what is there in the corner, where I'm sure everybody heard in Lawrence, Old Beach Township, what happened that time. But it's cleaning up. But I think I will appreciate it if all this take in consideration, because they gave a good report. And only reason I am coming up to say a few words is the plaza, we've been there for 3 years, fully occupied. Mattress Place went a couple times. There is no much traffic there because mattress guy opens late. The CBD guy comes 9 o'clock. Chinese, the lady which is used to be a groomers now is a Poppin because groomers left and Poppin came in. It's also closed door. They all do everything online, nothing opens. Chinese restaurant is delivery only. There is no tables and chairs inside. There's a one little table and 2 chairs for you to sit while you wait for your food. And UPS store is you drop it off, you leave. You drop it off, you leave. And we operate that store. So I know. So basically, if you go any time of the day, I don't see you will see. I haven't seen, because I always speak out from my pharmacy and go and say, hopefully they're doing more business, because that's what I worry about. At the end of the day, I want to rent for them, right? So, and never seen more than 10 cars in the parking lot. Never. So wanted to bring something exciting. And during that, when he recommended that, I sent him to all the neighbors in the back and got signatures saying, you okay with him? They were all okay. And I think this was provided with you on the paper. So that's all I was here to say. And so that's the end of my thing.
All right, we appreciate your comment. Any of the board members have any questions for the owner of the plaza? None? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Desai.
No problem.
Mr. Sachs, we have not opened the public portion, so I have to do that if it's okay with you now.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman.
2-2023Z, this is 301 Route 35 for a billiards hall requiring D variance and major and preliminary site plan. Anyone here in the courtroom wish to be heard on this matter, please raise your hand or step forward. There are no other public, there are no members of the public here other than the applicant and I guess potential managers or owners. I'll close the public portion at this time. Board members, we've reached the point where we're either going to take a vote tonight or the applicant's going to wait. We only have 5 members up here. This would require, this is a D variance, so if we're approved, it would require all 5 of the members here sitting. That is not my decision. That is the decision of the attorney. And he will make that decision. But before we go any further, I want everybody to know that, and then Mr. Sachs, I'll bounce it back to you whether you want me to call for a vote tonight or not. I think that you may want to hear from other board members and at least give them the opportunity to weigh in on this. I don't think it's a big matter, but it may be to some people. And once again, I get 1 vote. I don't know what the others may say or may not. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I wouldn't mind if you could do some type of polling of the board members. And if there is an issue with regard to hours of operation, I'd like to hear
Something
that
we
as
could
well.
address it the next time, maybe, you said?
Well, I'd like to hear it
Sure,
even now,
okay.
but certainly if we could poll.
No,
the
I'm
board.
saying if we hear anything, you could address that at a later point, maybe. Our board members, as I did for the other applicants tonight, because we are at minimum, if you have an issue about this particular application and you need to hear more about something else, or you have a particular issue with hours, parking, and those are 2 of the issues that I heard come forward. If those are your concerns, then we should probably move to another date. Mr. Scogni, if you have issues with this, I would appreciate it. Well, that's being honest, that's great.
I just don't think it's
That's fine.
suitable for that area.
No, I believe,
I don't think it's suitable for that area.
That's
I
fine.
know you mentioned Edison, but this is the harbor.
Okay.
And crime is going up in the harbor, not going down. And from 12 to 2 in the morning, I just don't see it. It's not safety for the residents in that area. That's my feelings.
All right, thank you for your comments. Mr. Stoner, you okay? Or do you have anything you would like them to come back with? You do not.
I do not have any issues with this.
Mr. Connor?
I do not have any issues, including the hours of operation.
Yeah, I previously spoke to the hours. I think that people should be able to operate their business, and if we don't restrict liquor licenses, then why would we restrict this? So I don't have any problem with the issue at all. Okay.
Okay. In light of what I've heard, I'm not a gambling man, so I'm going to request that I come back when you have a full board.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be at the next meeting.
Yes, I believe we can continue this for June 1st, since this, as well as the other 2 applications, are only returning for a vote.
All right.
We'll be able to get a transcript by then.
Yes, and that will be without further notice?
Right.
Okay.
Right. This matter will be continued, 3-2023Z will be continued to June 1st, no further notice. Mr. Sachs, thank you in your professional, and Mr. Desai, thank you as the property, as the owner.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, we
Chairman.
stand in
Thank you.
recess. We have no further, we're good, you're done with us. We thank you for being here tonight. Hope you enjoyed it.
General public comment.
We have general public comments tonight, and there are none unless you gentlemen want to make any comments. I didn't think so. Very good. Okay. Board members, any final comments you want to say before we leave? Have a good weekend, everybody.
Have a very nice weekend.
We're slowly approaching the first warm holiday of, well, not necessarily warm, but first summer holiday coming up. When do we meet again, Ms. C?
May 14th.
May 18th is our next meeting, virtual meeting.
May 18?
Correct.
Okay. Board members, we'll see everyone May 18. That's on Zoom though, right?
Via Zoom, yes.
That's a via Zoom meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend. Good night.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
John?
All in favor? Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
2 minutes to go.
2 minutes.
Got in under the-